Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I've been married for 33 years to my wife, and we're both 55. We have 2 kids and 2 grandkids, whom we love dearly. We met at a nightclub in the 80s, where I worked as a bouncer. After our first date, we moved in together just 2 months later, and 2 years after that, we got married. We've had a good life together, balancing work and play while raising our children. However, I transitioned from a physically demanding job to a more sedentary one, which led to significant weight gain. This affected our intimacy. At times, I struggled to finish making love due to asthma attacks. We tried various ways to revitalize our love life, remaining monogamous throughout, especially since I had been cheated on in the past, making infidelity a firm boundary for both of us. We truly loved each other, believing we would grow old together. After 20 years of a dead bedroom, I decided to make a change. Over the course of 2 years, I lost 80 kilograms, 176 pounds, and underwent a tummy tuck. While it may seem vain, my motivations were threefold: to see my grandkids grow up, to improve my health, and to reignite our sex life. Thankfully, that worked. For the past 2 years, we've made love 3 to 4 times a week, and my wife has thoroughly enjoyed every moment. I always believed that my wife's body didn't lie. We were in a good place to enjoy our lives together. She still says she loves me, and I feel the same way. Throughout our 33 years of marriage, I've never cheated on her, and I'm confident she hasn't cheated on me either. It was just one of those things. Until 3 days ago. She went on a holiday with her 2 sisters, traveling interstate, and I had no issues with it because I trusted her. We both knew that infidelity was a deal breaker for us, even after all these years. Our relationship has always been transparent. We had apps on our phones to track each other's whereabouts, not out of distrust, but for safety. We shared access to our messages and emails, and trust was never an issue. After I lost weight and started looking better, I noticed I was getting more attention from women, but I always brushed it off because I was happily married. My wife did express some insecurities about my newfound attractiveness, especially since she had put on some weight, but that never bothered me. I love her no matter what she looks like. I tell her daily how much I love her and how beautiful she is, and our intimacy has been amazing. I often regret that we didn't try harder earlier on to keep that spark alive. Then, just as I was finishing work and heading home, I got a call from my wife. She sounded very upset and asked if my sister-in-law had spoken to me. I said no and asked what was wrong, never expecting the words that would follow. She confessed that she had cheated and had sex with another man. She was so sorry and didn't understand what had come over her. I was in shock, and my heart just broke. I sat in my car, feeling completely numb as she continued to speak. She explained that she and her sisters had been enjoying a few drinks when a married couple joined them. They drank until 2 a.m., and when her sisters had already left to return to their room, the bar closed. She told me that she was very drunk and went to the couple's room to keep drinking and talking. They complimented her, saying how sensual she was and how lucky her husband was. Then, the man started touching her, and the wife encouraged it, telling her that no one would know and to just enjoy herself. My wife said it felt like it wasn't even her in that moment, but she ended up making love with the husband while the wife watched. In the morning, she woke up in bed with both of them, and in a panic, she ran back to her room. Her sister caught her, and my wife confessed everything. Her sister insisted that she had to tell me or she would. As she sobbed over the phone, begging for my forgiveness, I felt completely numb. I couldn't understand how she could throw away everything we had built together. She cried, saying she was so sorry and hated herself, reiterating how much she loved me and how she had made a terrible mistake. I corrected her, telling her that she didn't make a mistake. She made a decision. In that moment, I hung up on her and turned off my phone. When I got home, I sat in a chair, trying to process everything that had just happened and wondering what would come next. I cried over the loss of the wife I had known for so many years, grieving the future we had envisioned together and the impact her decision would have on our family. My life, as I knew it, felt like it was over. I shut myself off for the past 2 days, and when I finally turned my phone back on, I found hundreds of messages from her and her sisters. The last one said she was on her way home. My kids had also tried to reach me because their mother was calling them to check if I was okay and whether they had heard from me. I called my kids and explained what had happened, telling them I was as okay as could be expected. I let them know that I would be leaving home to sort myself out before she returned, and I asked them not to tell her where I was going. I needed to come to grips with the end of my marriage. I also sent a text to my soon-to-be ex-wife, telling her that we were getting a divorce and that I didn't want to hear from her. I expressed that I didn't care about the details anymore and that I was done caring about her. The pain was overwhelming. I never imagined her love could be shattered so quickly. I may ramble a bit since there's so much on my mind, and my thoughts keep jumping from one thing to another. To clarify, while our sex life had its challenges, it wasn't completely non-existent, but compared to the last 2 years, it felt that way. My previous active job was in the military, but I got injured during a training exercise, which led to a desk job and ultimately a medical discharge. After that, my wife and I started a small business together. Before I speak to my wife, I've had in-depth conversations with my sister-in-law and her husband. The story my wife told me was certainly different from what she initially confessed. My kids were horrified by what happened and just wanted to support me. I explained to them that while they may feel angry with their mother, she is still their mom and the grandmother of their children. She loves them, and what she did to our marriage doesn't change that. My wife and her sisters cut their holiday short and came home. I left a note for my wife, telling her to pack her things and go stay at her mother's house, which she did. The details of how everything went down are much worse than what my wife initially told me. Even though she confessed under the threat of being exposed, she didn't tell the whole truth, though that didn't come as a surprise. My wife broke down to her sister and apparently revealed everything. I won't know what to believe until I sit down with her. According to the story she told her sister, she loves me and our marriage and never expected to do this. She blames our lack of intimacy over the last 2 years for her need to explore what else she felt she was missing. She expressed that she had always been the attractive one in our relationship, but now believes the roles have reversed. This made her feel insecure, and she needed to be desired by someone else. She insists it was the first time, but she did plan it. It was a fantasy she acted on to scratch an itch, and she never intended to tell me. Unbeknownst to her sisters, the couple my wife met were actually customers of ours from out of state. I haven't met them personally, but my wife often spoke with them on the phone. She went for drinks to meet up with them, but her sisters tagged along, so they pretended to be strangers until they left. While she did drink, she wasn't falling down drunk. The three of them had this plan in place before they went away. My wife is coming over this afternoon to talk, and apparently, she's beside herself with worry about what will happen next. I already know what I will do. She chose to cheat, and now everyone will feel the repercussions. The truth about her infidelity makes it even more devastating to me and strengthens my resolve. I didn't cheat, and I didn't force her to lie. Her feelings about having lost me and her marriage are accurate, but I don't care how miserable she is. This was her choice, and no one else's. Now, we all have to deal with it. We are done, and we will have to navigate our changed lives. I had the talk with my wife yesterday. After so many years together, we both found it hard to sleep without the other by our side. That's how it's been for decades. But last night was the first night I slept very well without her there. When she came to the house, she walked through the door looking terrible, exhausted, guilty, scared, and red-eyed. Normally, my heart would break and I'd want to comfort her, but not this time. I was sitting at the table when she started to cry again, rushing in for a hug while blubbering about how she messed up and was so sorry. I raised my hand to stop her, telling her not to touch me and to sit down. She complied, and I offered to make her a coffee, which she accepted. As I made the coffee and returned to the table, her eyes never left me. She began to speak, but I told her to be quiet and just answer my questions, emphasizing that this wasn't about her but about me and the marriage. I told her that, at this point, we were done. She had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. I had already decided, but I wanted to extract some semblance of truth from her. I thought that if she believed she had a chance, she might be a bit more honest. I told her I had spoken with her sister, which was true, but I fabricated that I had spoken with the couple. Inside, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Happy that she was so upset, but also sad for us, along with disappointment, anger, and all the typical feelings one might have. Yet, I remained calm, which seemed to frighten her the most. Honestly, it felt more like a job interview than a conversation. I asked her how many times she cheated. She said physically once and twice over video chat. I then asked her to explain how it all happened. She told me that their business conversations had turned to flirting, and when the wife said it was okay and got involved, it gradually escalated to her watching them make love. She admitted that it had always been a fantasy of hers to be intimate while the wife watched, and they were all for it. As she recounted this, she cried, mentioning that it felt dangerous, which only made it more exciting for her. When she started to share her feelings of insecurity, I cut her off, telling her I didn't want to hear her excuses or justifications. I had to wait about 5 minutes for her to gather herself before we could continue. I even got up to grab her some tissues, and she told me that they had met up as planned. After her sisters left the bar, they went straight to the couple's room. I asked her if she ever intended to tell me about this, and she admitted she hadn't. She described it as just a fantasy she thought she could fulfill, convincing herself she could engage in it without considering the consequences. I called her out, insisting that her past was now irrelevant. It didn't matter if she had cheated once or 1,000 times. The outcome would still be the same. The only ones who would truly suffer from her actions were our kids and her relationship with them, along with our future grandkids. I expressed my disbelief but made it clear that at this point, it didn't change anything. At that moment, she started to understand that I had no intention of reconciling after her betrayal. She begged me to work on our marriage, promising she would do anything, even allowing me to have affairs if it meant I would stay. She insisted she would never cheat again. I told her to really consider what she was saying. She had already degraded herself enough. I made it clear that I would never cheat in a marriage, and if I were to sleep with someone else, it would signify that we were separated with no chance of reconciliation. I reiterated that the last thing on my mind was infidelity. She reached out to grab my hand, but I pulled away, telling her I would never touch her again. It's not that I'm judgmental of anyone's lifestyle choices. That's their business. I understand that some people have affairs or open marriages, but the bottom line is that we didn't. The trust and respect between us were shattered when she decided to bring another man into our lives. I've always been a pragmatic person, and oddly enough, I felt relief. I told her we would make this as easy as possible for both of us. She took that as a glimmer of hope for our relationship, but I quickly clarified, no, we are done. I meant every word. I would never touch her again. I can't forget that she slept with another man. The woman I loved and married is dead to me. She died the moment she not only cheated but planned for it. All our good memories, our holidays, building our first home, raising our children, and all the laughter we shared are now just that, memories. We are going to have separate lives, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. When I do meet another woman, I hope to create new memories with her and find love again. She was shaking and crying when I told her this, but it didn't faze me. All I wanted was for her to leave my house. She struggled to continue the conversation, so I went down to the shed to reach out to my kids. When I explained what was happening, they were very supportive and urged me not to drag this out. Just finish it. When I returned upstairs, she immediately began again with the apologies, saying we could make this work. I sat down and stated clearly that we would sell the house and the business and split everything 50-50ths. I told her she could have the car, and I would take the truck and my motorcycle. I also informed her that she could keep the cats. Then I made it clear, don't call me, text me, or contact me in any way unless it's about the kids or grandkids. I will contact the lawyers and get the divorce process started. She's free to pursue whoever she wants now that she's a free woman. She told me she didn't want to be with anyone else, accusing me of being deliberately mean and unemotional. I responded that I was simply being honest. Her actions have put me in an emotional void. She is the only one to blame for the destruction of our marriage. No one else. I loved her unconditionally, and she's the one who messed it all up. After that, I left the house so she could sort through her things and take whatever she needed. I spent a few hours at my daughter's place, talking with her and playing with my granddaughter. When I got home, she had left, and honestly, I had the best night's sleep I've had in a long time, without her. Now, I'm looking at what the next 6 months will bring. It's been 5 hectic weeks since my soon-to-be ex-wife threw our marriage away. I've had a lot of time to reflect on my decision, and I still believe I made the right choice. I could never trust her again. The thought of touching her makes me sick. It was her decision to cheat and destroy our marriage for no reason other than thinking she could get away with it. She's still staying with her mother while I prepare the house for sale. We've lived here for 20 years, so there's been a lot to clear out and organize, but I've managed it. We've put the house on the market, and there are a couple of eager buyers interested, so I'm hopeful it will sell in the next week or two. The business has already been sold. Thankfully, one of our clients wanted to expand, and I accepted their offer last week. The settlement will take place in about a month. You always hear about divorce, but living through it is already a pain in the back. Here, you have to be separated for 12 months and a day before you can file for divorce. Then it takes 4 months for the divorce to go through, and that's only if it's uncontested. Property settlement is a separate issue and isn't handled until after the divorce is finalized. I don't plan on having any joint possessions left to settle, and as long as she continues to sign the sales contracts, it'll make my life a lot easier to move on. Her way of thinking is different, though. My son has only spoken to her once since all this started, and apparently, it wasn't a nice phone call. Just to clarify, my children are all grown adults with kids of their own. I told my son that it will take time, but she is still his mother, and she was a good one. I encouraged him not to let her decision destroy their relationship. My daughter, on the other hand, has been talking to her throughout this process. She's ashamed of what her mother did, but has been supporting her through the breakup. My daughter is very honest and gives her mother the full repercussions of her actions, warts and all. My soon-to-be ex-wife, however, seems deluded enough to think that I will eventually get over it and forgive her. She believes that all the years we spent together will be enough to make me change my mind, but she's in for a rude awakening. When she came over to sign the real estate contract, she told me that I would change my mind, that I still loved her, and that she would be a better wife when I did. She said we would still grow old together and have a wonderful life, calling this just a speed bump in our marriage that we would both get over. I was gobsmacked. I just looked at her and said she was effing nuts to think any of that. She lied and cheated in the worst way. She had another man's crap inside her while his wife watched. How could I ever want to touch her again? She said she knew she shouldn't have gone through with it and didn't know what she was thinking, claiming it wasn't even that good. I told her to shut up. I didn't want to hear if she enjoyed it or not. The point is, she effing did it. I told her we had zero hope of reconciliation, that I wanted nothing to do with her, and that I was looking forward to getting on with my life without her. I think she's in massive denial about what's happening and doesn't realize she no longer has any control over my actions. She's not entitled to her scheming and cheating while pretending we had a loving marriage. Her actions are why this is happening, and she knew that before she did what she did, so she can't be so naive to think otherwise. The funny thing is, I'm getting a fair amount of attention from other women now. I'm certainly not interested in anything with women at this time, but it's nice to know that when I'm ready, I'll have plenty of options. My soon-to-be ex-wife even got angry that women we know have been over to visit and bring me dinner, just to talk, of course. She told me she wants me to get it out of my system and that she will be waiting. I mean, seriously, how effed up is she? The only thing I want out of my system is her. My emotions are still a major factor. Hate, anger, disgust, the feeling of loss, betrayal, and sadness. But I am a strong man, and I will deal with them. My goal now is to focus on getting rid of any financial entanglements with my wife and get on with my life. 3 months down the track, and I've moved things very quickly. The business was sold, the house is sold, and I'm legally separated, waiting for the divorce waiting period. But for all intents and purposes, I have separated all our joint assets and am starting on the road to my new life. I never would have thought I'd be where I am today. 3 months ago, I had the life I wanted. A loving wife, a self-employed career, great family and friends, and a nice home. I was looking forward to having my wife with me for the rest of our lives. Then my soon-to-be ex-wife effed it all up for herself and our family by lying, cheating, and being disloyal. We had our problems like every long-term couple, but we always stayed true to each other. When she got caught, it destroyed me. The loss of our lives together was devastating, and I couldn't fathom why she did this. But this is where my life changed. For me, it wasn't what I wanted, but it was decided for me by my cheating wife. I am a pragmatic man who has always had strong family values, and this has made the transition to where I am now easier. I have made the decision not to let my feelings make me wallow in self-pity. I refuse to act like a victim. It gets you nowhere. With the sale of the family home and the business, after splitting everything equally with my soon-to-be ex-wife, I had enough to buy 2 small units near my grandchildren. My son and daughter live in different states with their partners and kids. I did this because I want my own space, but be close enough to visit. I'm currently working in a part-time role offered by a former business competitor, which provides me with plenty of free time to start enjoying life again. After a few weeks with nothing to do, I took my bike out for some rides. No set destination, just stopping for coffee and sightseeing. I spent evenings at pubs, enjoying a drink or two before heading out the next day. I've been surprised by how casual the relationship scene is, and I have to admit, I'm liking it. Over the past couple of weeks, I've connected with a few women without any expectations, just some fun and intimacy without emotional baggage. It's refreshing, and I'm feeling surprisingly good. Some people have asked if I've reached out to the couple my wife cheated with, but I see no need to do so. The decision to cheat was my soon-to-be ex-wife's, not theirs, and I have no interest in contacting them. They don't matter to me. I believe the best way to get back at a cheating partner is to show apathy and focus on your own life. Yes, the memories of what happened linger, but life moves on, and it's essential to prioritize yourself. My soon-to-be ex-wife seems to be in denial, thinking that once I calm down, I'll want her back. I've made it clear that our marriage is over and that there's no chance for reconciliation. I've told her I no longer care about her actions or who she spends time with. Our lives are now separate. My daughter mentioned that her mother feels sad and embarrassed about what she did, hoping to convince me to take her back. I told my daughter that will never happen. Her mother's remorse is rooted in the fact that she got caught, not genuine regret for her actions. Life has turned out quite differently than I expected, but I'm genuinely looking forward to what the future holds. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I'm in a unique situation and want to know if anyone else has experienced something similar. I'm not the wounded person here. My husband, kids, and parents bear the burden of my past mistakes, for which I am genuinely sorry. Let me be straightforward. About 19 months ago, I was caught having an affair with a married neighbor and father of 3. I'm a 32-year-old woman, my husband is 39, and the neighbor, whom I'll call Steve for confidentiality, was 27 at the time. I made a terrible mistake having the affair with Steve, which began a little over 2 years ago. While the affair lasted nearly 5 months before being exposed, I was physically with Steve only 4 times in total. I know it's hard to believe, but I swear it's true. Well, let me tell you something. I don't believe it. To address questions about my marriage that I'm sure everyone reading this has, were we having issues? Did I not love my husband? Was I unhappy? The answer is a definite no to all those questions. I was completely content and fulfilled in my marriage, and I love my husband and our 2 boys, ages 9 and 11, more than anything in the world. Jim satisfied me emotionally, mentally, and physically. He was everything I ever dreamed of and more. My attraction to Steve was misplaced and stemmed from a deep place that took me back to my first romantic encounter at 18. It was a wild attraction, just like my first time. It was like a wild animal instinct inside me that drove me to this. In high school, I dated 4 boys, but nothing serious beyond a quick kiss at the end of the night. In fact, I considered all those guys as friends since we all grew up together. One day, I was invited to a barbecue at a friend's parents' place where I met Charles. Charles was my friend's cousin, and from the first time I saw him, I was captivated. I was taken at the time. He was 20, and I was 18. From the moment we met, we couldn't keep our eyes off each other. I don't know what it was, but there was something between us that drew me to him, like a magnet to steel or a magnet to metal, she says. We started talking at the barbecue, and he had to leave for work, so we exchanged numbers the next day. On Sunday, we met for ice cream in the evening and took a walk. We talked for hours, totally engrossed with each other, and just spontaneously started kissing. He invited me back to his apartment, and there I had my first experience. Something about Charles excited me and made me want to give him every part of me. To this day, I can't describe it. It was subconscious. I couldn't resist. Beyond the physical relationship, we had nothing in common. In fact, we were incompatible. I ended things with Charles 11 months later, after the passion wore off. A year later, I met my now husband, Jim. He checked all my boxes, and I knew he was the one. We got married a year later, and our marriage had been 13 years of joy until I ruined it. We were blessed with 2 wonderful boys who are the spitting image of their dad and share his awesome personality. I'm sharing these details to explain why I started a relationship with Steve. Steve and his wife, Marcia, moved into our neighborhood, and they were the youngest couple. My husband and I are the second youngest, with the others mostly in their 60s. Everyone warmly welcomed Steve and Marcia. They were invited to a neighborhood picnic, where Steve and I first noticed each other, similar to when I first met Charles at a family barbecue a long time ago. The next time I saw Steve was at the car dealership where he worked in finance. We were looking for a new SUV, and when my husband found out Steve worked there, they started talking. We went the next week to check out cars. Steve made sure we got a good deal, and he arranged great financing. Throughout the closing process, Steve and I exchanged glances, but my husband didn't notice. A few days later, I had to bring the vehicle back for mud flaps, and that's when Steve and I had our first inappropriate meeting. He greeted me in the lounge, and then in his office, he mentioned additional financing details. We chatted, and he confessed he wanted to talk to me alone about his feelings. I admitted I felt something too, but it was wrong. He knew it was wrong but didn't care. He wanted me. Fast forward to the next morning, when we had our first closeness encounter at his house after our kids went to school and our spouses left for work. By the way, my husband has a good job, and Marcia is a licensed practical nurse. Steve and I only had physical relations 4 times in the entire 5-month period. There was no love connection, as I loved Jim and Steve loved Marcia. What we had was just physical, and to be honest, it wasn't as good as what I had with my husband. Not even close, but it was forbidden, and therefore thrilling and dangerous. Looking back now, being a stay-at-home mom for 11 years made me desperate for attention from this attractive younger man. I thought I could have this secret adventure and still maintain a loving marriage with my husband. That idea came crashing down one Thursday morning, 19 months ago, when Steve and I were caught in bed at his house by Marcia's mother. She walked in on us, fully engaged, and started screaming obscenities. She slapped and scratched Steve, leaving a large gash with her nails. She also hit me square on the jaw and pulled out 2 handfuls of my hair before I could gather my clothes and leave the house. When I got home, I was completely shocked by what had just happened, and the reality of my actions sank in. I realized my perfect marriage to Jim was forever changed and could end because of this. I sat silently for a couple of hours, just staring at the walls, wondering how to tell my husband. Eventually, I decided to call him and left an urgent message, stating that I had something very important to discuss. He didn't respond, so I texted him, but still got no reply. A few minutes later, Marcia and her mother showed up on our front porch, knocking on the door in the bay window, screaming for me to answer. Terrified and thoroughly embarrassed, I didn't respond. Luckily, my boys were at school when this happened. After they left, I laid down on the couch, crying. I briefly fell asleep, but woke up to the sound of a car door in the driveway. I looked out and saw my husband. I rushed to freshen up before going back into the living room to greet him when he opened the door. However, he didn't enter. Instead, I saw through the window that he was walking down the street toward Steve and Marcia's house. I watched as he spent nearly 3 hours there before coming home. I went to hug him, but he kept me away. I started apologizing, but he said my apology wasn't accepted, and he wanted me to leave. I fell to the floor, crying and begging, telling him I didn't want to go, but he insisted. He then called my mother, explained what I'd done, and asked her to come over and pick me up. Mom came over, apologized to Steve, convinced me to go back to her house for the night, and helped me pack some clothes. I left, crying, asking Jim what he would tell the kids. He said he would take care of it. I left, broken-hearted and ashamed. That night, I called Jim, and to my surprise, he answered. He just said hello and went silent. I identified myself, apologized, and promised never to do something like this again. I expressed my commitment to spend the rest of my life making it up to him. Jim remained silent, asking if I had anything more to say. I said no, and asked him about his feelings. He told me he knew what he was feeling, and I started crying. He then said he wanted me to stay at my parents' house for a couple of weeks before coming home. I reluctantly agreed, but asked when I would get to see him and the boys again. He said he didn't want to see me now, but agreed to a brief call every evening at 9 o'clock. The first call ended with me saying, "I love you," and Jim saying nothing, just hanging up. The next night's call went the same way, with me apologizing and Jim staying silent until I stopped talking. He then dropped a bomb, saying he wanted a divorce. Hearing this, I broke down and begged him for another chance. He refused, acknowledging he'd lose half his hard-earned assets. Then, he unexpectedly said he'd give me everything he owns if I just disappeared and left him and the boys alone. I broke down again, insisting he didn't mean that, but he affirmed that he did. We ended the call, and I cried all night. I then started thinking of how I could make him stay, and came up with a plan to offer him a post-nuptial agreement so favorable he couldn't refuse it. All I wanted was a second chance to prove my love, regardless of the cost. The following week, while Jim met with his divorce attorney, I consulted my own lawyer, not to prepare for divorce, but to create a post-nuptial agreement to present to Jim before receiving the divorce papers. I visited 4 different attorneys before finding one who specialized in post-nuptial agreements and was willing to create such a lopsided agreement. Lopsided in that my husband would receive nearly all the benefit in exchange for remaining married to me for a period, giving me a second chance at love. Unfortunately, Jim's lawyer completed the divorce papers in just 11 days, and I was served at my parents' house 2 days later. I had Jim served with the proposed postnuptial agreement. We talked that night, After he read the proposal, he was a bit surprised at what I had offered, and for the first time, I could sense the caring person I once knew coming through, not the angry man who had been so robotic and cold for the past 2 weeks. The agreement is a complete win for Jim and an opportunity for me to prove I'm worth keeping. I won't go into specific details about the post-nuptial, but I can confirm that it allows Jim to keep nearly all our marital assets if we stay married and live together for at least 30 months. Also, if I'm unfaithful again and we divorce, I lose all claims on our marital assets, get nothing, and forgo any alimony and child support payments. The agreement also requires me to get a full-time job within the next 6 months and contribute to our household expenses. Finally, my husband can see other women if he chooses throughout the remainder of our marriage. I know Jim would never be unfaithful. It's not in him. But I want him to know I love him enough to give him this option. To my surprise and delight, Jim accepted the offer with one additional stipulation. The clause Jim wanted added stated there is no requirement for us to sleep together or have any type of cohabitation coitus during the remainder of our marriage. I was saddened and hesitant to agree to this, but I finally did, feeling that with time I could win back his respect, trust, and passionate love. Things have not gone as I thought, and that's why I'm here. We are now 17 and a half months into our second marriage, as I call it, and our relationship is one of being housemates, raising our boys. Don't get me wrong, I thank God every day for the second chance I've been given, but what we have wouldn't qualify as a marriage. It's more like we are two divorced people, cohabitating. Since my affair, Jim has shown absolutely no affection towards me whatsoever. I mean nothing, not even a kiss or a hug. He won't even let me near him to express any type of affection, although I do get in for a hug and a kiss occasionally before he can block me. But I can tell he doesn't like it, so I don't do it very often. Even so, he requires me to submit monthly to at-home STD testing. Also, since the affair, Jim will not go out in public with me, even to family events. When our boys have games, we alternate who takes them. When it's my turn, Jim shows up at the games but doesn't sit with me. Instead, he normally stands on the sidelines with other fathers and acts like I'm not there. The only time we go out together is when we go out of town or on vacations, which we do often. When we travel, he orders adjoining rooms with 2 queen beds each. The boys stay in one room, and we stay in the other in separate beds. I look forward to every trip, as these are the times we are closest and where I've almost been able to break through to him. I told Jim about this and suggested we move from our neighborhood to start fresh. However, Jim said he'd only move if he gets a job promotion requiring relocation. Otherwise, he plans to stay until our boys finish high school. The boys also don't want to move because all their friends live nearby, as do Jim's friends. Since the affair, I lost all my friendships in the neighborhood. Steve and Marcia divorced 8 months after D-Day, but Marcia and her kids still live down the street. The neighborhood women I was once close to cut me off, blaming me for breaking up the family. Now, my home feels like a prison, and I rarely go outside, staying inside or in my backyard tending to my gardens. My boys are often out with their friends in the neighborhood, including Marcia and Steve's kids, but thankfully, their world hasn't changed much. Jim follows a similar routine, hanging out with neighborhood men, smoking cigars, and sipping bourbon at night, either at our house or theirs. After work, the guys enjoy relaxing together. Jim goes to work, hits the gym, and then comes home, usually avoiding the dinner I make. On weekends, he grills and only eats what he cooks, not my dishes. Weekday dinners with my boys have become a great bonding experience. We eat around 4 o'clock when they get home from school, setting the table, helping with final food prep, and cleaning up together. This time has brought us closer, teaching valuable skills, even in the garden where we've created an awesome space. In summary, some things in my life are great, while others are awful. I'm unsure whether this marriage is worth continuing in its current state, or if I should let Jim go now and provide financial benefits. Deep down, I know he's not happy and no longer sees me as his wife or lover, just as a co-parent. I love Jim a lot and will carry the burden of what I did for the rest of my life. I want to return to the loving relationship we once had, but I doubt he'll allow it. Please let me know what you think I should do. I'd appreciate any suggestions on how to successfully earn back my husband's love and trust after betraying him so brazenly. Thank you, Amy. Update. Last month I followed the advice and decided to temporarily move out of the house to give our marriage some space. I rented a furnished apartment nearby and have been living there since. While I miss being with my husband and boys, and I miss my gardens, it's a relief to be away from that neighborhood. There are too many bad memories and vibes there, all of which I know are my fault. I'm not making excuses for what I did. When I told Jim about my decision, he seemed surprised and a bit saddened, asking many questions. His reaction showed me a lot, indicating that he still loves me. I could see it in his eyes. I pick up my boys after school, and they come over to my apartment for dinner and spend the night a few days a week. Jim and I are flexible about it, and the kids can come and go freely between our places. The main challenge now is that being out of the house means I don't see Jim much, and I'm not in a position to talk to him. So I end up calling him, asking silly questions multiple times a week just to stay connected. We've had several lengthy conversations about various things recently, another sign that he still loves me. I know I love him. That's all for now. Thanks and take care. Update. What a journey. Life is like a roller coaster with its ups and downs. Unfortunately, after 2 years into our second marriage, Jim decided that it's best for us to get a divorce. Jim mentioned that he still loves me and might want to rekindle a romantic relationship in the future, but he believes it's challenging to do while we're married. He explained it's something psychological. He feels disrespected and betrayed while still married, but thinks he can let go of those feelings after the divorce. Jim suggested we celebrate our divorce once it's final, possibly even spending the night together. While it might sound like a strange way to part without guilt, I'm willing to go along with it if it means keeping Jim in my life as a partner, lover, and friend. Jim made it clear that even if we reconnect, we won't get remarried. He believes a binding contract isn't necessary if we truly love each other. I agree with that, but I do wish there was a way to do this without divorcing. Regarding the divorce, I've decided to let him keep 3/4 of our marital assets voluntarily, despite him not meeting the postnup stipulations. I won't pursue alimony or child support. Some may criticize me for being generous, but I believe he earned the money and would have given it all to me if I had remained faithful. I'm at peace with this decision and can live comfortably for the next 8 years or more without working. Currently, I am working, so things are even better financially. I want to offer advice to women struggling with temptation, as I have. My suggestion is to resist it. The thrill is not worth the risk. If you find it challenging to control yourself, seek professional help. From my experience, the short-term high is not worth the long-term loss of love, respect, and trust. I'm a 32-year-old guy married to Kat. We've been together for the past 2 years, dating for 2 years before getting married. Recently, things have not been going well between us. The trouble started 2 months ago when my wife suggested we open up our marriage to add excitement. I was surprised by her suggestion. I never thought she'd bring it up. I want to clarify that I'm not trying to control her, but given our history, it's tough for me to believe she's interested in trying this. Let's face it, open marriage is risky and often ends up hurting one or both partners. I told her clearly that I'm not comfortable with an open marriage. It's not that I'm against trying new things or spicing up our married life, but I want those things to stay within the boundaries of a closed marriage with no third person involved. She was disappointed because it's rare for me to deny her something. I love her a lot and usually go along with her requests, even if it means making compromises. Although she didn't say anything after our conversation, I could sense that she was not happy about it. I wanted to get to the bottom of the situation and understand her reasoning. I began questioning my abilities in bed. I wanted to talk to her, but she remained silent. Kat is a consultant with a busy work schedule, often working in different time zones, which disrupts her work-life balance. While I also have a hectic work schedule, it doesn't require me to go beyond our time zone, making it easier for me. Due to her work schedule, I couldn't discuss my concerns with her. I blamed myself for impulsively saying no to her. I should have asked for more information before making a decision. I felt terrible. Nearly 2 weeks later, I got home early from work one day and made her favorite meal for dinner. She was happy with my gesture. We hugged and spent quality time together. I took that opportunity to ask her about her suggestion for an open marriage. She immediately became frustrated, accusing me of playing mind games. I didn't trick her. I just wanted to spend time with her and understand her perspective on open marriage. That's it. I got upset with her accusations and asked her directly if I was not meeting her needs. After that, she opened up. She told me about interns in her office who are fresh out of college and in their early 20s. They party a lot and hook up whenever they can. Their adventurous stories planted the idea of open marriage in her mind. She admitted to feeling a fear of missing out when her young colleagues talked about their exciting lives. I listened to her and understood her point of view. It's natural for people to be influenced by tempting things. I told her I'm not comfortable with the idea of an open marriage because I cherish our relationship. Our bond means a lot to me. Before I met Kat, I also lived a wild life in my 20s, doing the same things as others, but I went through the emotional challenges that everyone does. Excitement can fade, leaving behind emptiness. Finding comfort in Kat after meeting her, I didn't want to go back to my old life. We got married, and she was the one I envisioned a family and growing old with. I openly shared my thoughts on open marriage with her, suggesting we reconsider if she was genuinely interested. However, she immediately denied it, though she seemed to understand. I thought she agreed with my opinion during our conversation, but I was mistaken. Everything seemed normal for a few days, but after about a week, her behavior changed drastically. She started acting cold, attributing it to work stress. Recently, she's been behaving terribly, throwing tantrums over trivial things and mocking me as outdated. When I asked her about it, she explained that I'm too stubborn in sticking to my beliefs and not keeping up with trends. I questioned what she meant by following the trend, as I stay updated with fashion, music, and web series. I asked if my reluctance for an open marriage upset her, and she simply nodded, leaving me confused. Throughout this time, her work schedule became busier, with more late nights. Initially, it was only a few days a month, but now she's coming home late almost every other day, sometimes even at dawn. When I confronted her, she mentioned aiming for a promotion, proving her worth for the position. While I admire her ambition, I worry about the truth. Honestly, I'm hesitant to entertain negative thoughts or jump to conclusions. Yesterday, something happened that prompted me to share my feelings and seek advice from the community. I reached home earlier than usual and decided to prepare Kat's favorite lasagna for dinner. Despite her late-night plans, I wanted to surprise her. I messaged her, and she responded that she'd be late, maybe after midnight, dampening my enthusiasm. I spent the next hour playing video games, hungry, but wanting to have dinner with Kat. An urge led me to pick her up from the office, something I'd never done before unless we had plans after work. Thinking it would be a nice surprise, I rushed to her office, a standalone building easy to spot. Waiting outside for 30 to 45 minutes, it was 12:30 a.m., but there was no sign of Kat. Worried, I went upstairs to inquire at the reception. The office was still bustling with night shift employees, and the receptionist informed me that Kat had already left. I regretted the idea and drove back home, only to find she wasn't there either. Concerned for her safety, cheating was the last thing on my mind. I was more worried about her well-being. It was too late to reach out to any of Kat's work friends, and since she had only joined the company 6 months ago, I didn't have their contact information. I felt unsure about what to do. Exhausted and anxious, I fell asleep on the couch. When I woke up with the first light of the sun, I hurried to my room. On impulse, I found Kat comfortably sleeping in bed. I rushed to her, tucked her in, and went back to sleep. In the morning, she was already getting ready for work. I asked when she had come home last night, and she mentioned it was around 3 a.m. due to a busy day at work, including a meeting with an Asian client. Curious, I inquired about when she left the office, and she casually said around 2:30 a.m., leaving me shocked. Her response raised concerns. Either the receptionist gave me incorrect information about Kat not being at the office around 12:30 a.m., or Kat was lying about being there until 2:30 a.m. Still feeling dizzy from the previous night's stress, I didn't press further. She called me in the afternoon, asking if I had been to her office. The receptionist had informed her about my midnight visit. I wondered about the receptionist's unusual working hours, but explained why I had gone to her office. She was silent for a moment, then clarified that she had left her office in the afternoon for a meeting at her client's U.S. office in another part of the city. This explained why she wasn't in her office when I checked. I was puzzled by her explanation. She elaborated that her client was an Asian company with a U.S. office, where she participated in Zoom calls with employees in the Asian time zone. Despite this being a common practice worldwide, I felt confused about my own situation. I'm at a loss and don't know what to do next. Should I wait for things to settle or confront Kat again with my doubts? I've confronted her multiple times in the past. Any suggestions or advice would be appreciated. Update. I received some shocking news. Please bear with me as I vent. I attempted various ways to access Kat's emails or her phone's password, but she kept it very private. I tried hard to come up with ideas to uncover the truth, but I didn't succeed. In the last 2 weeks, Kat continued to come home late from work, and we were both giving each other the cold shoulder with very few occasional and transactional conversations. 2 days ago, she was talking to her mom, who has been dealing with kidney problems for the past few years, and her recent blood test results were not good. While she was on the bed talking to her mom, I, out of concern, took her phone to check on her mom while she narrated her tiresome routine of tests and medicine. Something clicked in my head. I peeked at the unlocked phone screen with chat notifications. I got up, walked into the room while talking to her mom, casually entered the washroom while on the phone, and locked the door. I put the phone on speaker, pretended to listen, and read the messages through the notification. The notification revealed that Kat was supposed to meet someone that day for a fun ride. I opened her social media messages, and you were right. She was having an affair. She was involved with these inexperienced coworkers. After a couple of minutes, she realized I took her phone into the washroom, and she started knocking on the door to get it back. I didn't have enough time to read all the conversations, so I quickly scanned her gallery for concrete proof. The gallery was filled with explicit pictures of my beautiful wife in compromising positions with her coworkers. I emailed those pictures to myself and deleted the history. She's cheating on me with multiple colleagues. I felt so sick that I wanted to throw up. Meanwhile, my wife kept knocking on the door, asking for her phone back. I couldn't stand to hear her nagging voice. I unlocked the door, swiftly handed her the phone, and locked the washroom again. Initially, I wanted to rush out and confront her right away. But instead, I calmed myself down and let the anger pass. The chat notifications contained details about the location and the time they were supposed to meet that day. Leaving the washroom, I grabbed the car keys and drove to that location. While leaving the house, she faintly called my name, but I didn't bother to turn back. At the hotel, I chose the darkest table in the lobby, not to cause a scene, but to observe how comfortable she was on her way to cheat. She was supposed to be there at 5 p.m., and I arrived at 3, downing countless shots by 5. I had initially hoped to confront her at home, but God knows what I was thinking. Maybe too numb and unready for a face-off, not even in the lobby. By 6, she didn't show up. I thought she might have sensed my presence and changed the location. Nevertheless, I was too drunk and drained to think clearly. I sat there, continuing to drink. Around 7, I saw Kat. At that sight, my world crumbled. My vision blurred after 4 hours of drinking. I faintly remembered what happened next, reacting in autopilot mode. I got up, staggered to the reception area where she was registering her entry, tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Good luck with your fun ride." I might have said more, but this is the summarized version. She held my hand, attempting to explain, but I don't recall her words. I do remember shrugging her off, freeing my arms from her grasp, and storming out of the hotel. I hailed a cab to my friend's place and passed out at his door. The next thing I remember is waking up on my friend's couch yesterday afternoon. I slept for 16 hours straight. It was Sunday afternoon. My friend Lee made me some lunch along with fresh lemonade. I poured out my entire story to him. He advised me to freeze joint accounts, change passwords, and get an STD check immediately. For someone betrayed so badly, money and all these privacy checks were the least of my concerns. I reached out to my dead phone, plugged it in, and switched it on. The screen flooded with notifications, 100+ missed calls, 50+ voicemails, and countless pleading messages. I ignored it all. After a few minutes, calls and messages from her started again. I blocked her on all platforms. I felt so disgusted that I didn't even read her messages and emails completely. Today is Monday. I've called in sick for the next few days at my office. I don't know how to deal with this. I've been drinking heavily and want to run away from all of this. I don't know what to do now. My friend is searching for some of the best lawyers in the vicinity. Update. I recommended securing our shared accounts, changing passwords for sensitive information, and getting tested for STDs. Thankfully, the test results were negative. Lee assisted me in finding a lawyer, and I shared all the pictures from Kat's phone with him. I temporarily settled with Lee until the divorce is finalized, which worked out well since he needed a roommate. Throughout this time, Kat has been trying to reach me, pleading for us to get back together and start anew. She also contacted Lee, asking for his help in reconciling our marriage. According to her, the hookups were meaningless, and she was just exploring her desires, wanting to feel attractive. I'm uncertain about these Gen Z concepts of desirability and whether the whole idea is genuine or not. A few days after my last update, I sent Lee to my house with keys to collect my belongings, hoping Kat would be at the office on a regular workday. However, Lee found her at home, where she broke down and sought his help. Lee was clever enough to inform her that I was staying in a hotel, not at his place, to avoid any potential drama. Kat informed Lee that she had quit her job, revealing that it all began when interns at work started flirting with her. They made her feel desired and beautiful again, leading her to try various experiences, including illicit ones. Initially, it was a one-time thing, but she later became dependent on the thrill. Since the interns didn't make enough money, they relied on Kat to cover their expenses. She eventually realized they were taking advantage of her financially, but by then, she was already immersed in that lifestyle. When Lee questioned why she didn't confess earlier, Kat claimed she had spoken to me about opening up the marriage due to guilt. However, my refusal to agree prevented her from confessing anything to me. I find it confusing. What's the point of asking for an open marriage after cheating on me? Kat is resisting signing the divorce papers and blaming me for motivating her one-night stands, but she can't provide evidence for her false claims. Now she's seeking alimony, citing mental distress caused by the divorce. If anyone deserves compensation, it's me, as I had to endure the terrible feelings of betrayal. Later that month, Kat's sister, Amy, name changed, contacted me, pleading for reconciliation. She shared how Kat is going through tough times, leading to severe depression due to the interns damaging her reputation at the office. They circulated compromising pictures of Kat having fun with them to other senior employees, mocking her as an easy target. This gossip made her the center of attention at the office, forcing her to leave. Senior employees spread the gossip outside the office network, making it difficult for Kat to get referrals. I reminded Amy that Kat chose to leave our stable married life for a thrilling experience, and now she has to face the consequences. Anyways, I'm moving forward with my life. I've kept my drinking habits in check, focused on working out, eating healthy, and staying busy at work. The divorce proceedings are ongoing despite Kat's resistance. It got delayed, but my lawyer assures me that it will wrap up soon.
I grew up in a small town where everyone seemed to know everyone else. My family ran a modest hardware store, and much of my childhood was spent stocking shelves or sweeping floors. My father was a patient man who taught me the value of hard work, while my mother, a teacher, insisted on the importance of compassion and education. Life was simple but good, with weekends often spent fishing with Dad or attending community events. I first met Annie at the county fair when we were both teenagers. She was fiery, ambitious, and so different from anyone I had ever known. We connected over books, spending hours talking about the worlds we'd escaped to through stories. She told me she wanted to see the world, and while I didn't share her wanderlust, I admired her determination. By the time we graduated high school, I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. While I studied business at a local college, Annie began her career as a nurse. Those years weren't easy. We worked hard and lived frugally, saving every penny we could. Our big break came when we bought our first house. It wasn't much, a small fixer-upper, but it was ours. We spent long nights painting walls and repairing leaks, often laughing at our inexperience. Those were some of the happiest times of my life. Sally was born a few years later, and everything changed. I fell in love with fatherhood in a way I never expected. Watching Sally discover the world was a joy, and I took every opportunity to teach her what I could, from music to the importance of kindness. I still remember the day I gave her first violin. She hated the sound it made at first, but fell in love with it over time. Annie and I both felt proud of the family we were building. As the years passed, life became a little more routine. My job grew more demanding, and Annie worked long hours at the hospital. We tried to keep the spark alive with date nights and family vacations, but something felt different. The passion we once had began to fade, replaced by the comfort of familiarity. I told myself that was just how long-term relationships worked. Looking back, I can see that Annie was quietly struggling. While I thought our life together was enough, she was yearning for something I couldn't see, something I didn't realize was missing until it was too late. That unspoken divide was the first crack in what I thought was a solid foundation. "Just sign the papers, Arthur. It's over." Her voice was calm, too calm, and it felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't fully process what she was saying, as if her words were coming from a place too distant for me to reach. The more she talked, the more I felt like I was drifting, like I was sinking deeper into some foggy abyss. Her voice faded into the background, leaving me alone with the suffocating quiet of the moment. I don't even know when it all started. Maybe the moment I stepped through the door after work that evening. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in her hand, her face set in an expression I knew all too well. Firm, determined, and just a little hostile. There were no greetings, no warmth, just her cold stare following me as I entered. She didn't even acknowledge me beyond that look. The tension in the room was thick, the silence loud enough to feel oppressive. I knew the moment I saw her that this was no ordinary conversation. There would be no small talk, no easing into whatever she had to say. The moment I sat down, I knew there was no avoiding it. No soft build-up, no small talk, just straight to the point. Annie told me she was leaving. She'd found someone else, someone who made her feel more than I ever could. She said I wasn't enough anymore, that I'd failed her. Hearing that felt like the ground beneath me suddenly gave way. It was like a door slamming shut, cutting off everything I thought I knew about us. But even as she spoke, the sting of it began to fade. Her voice grew louder, but everything else around me grew quieter, like I was being swallowed by a hollow space. The more she raged, the less I could hear, and the more detached I felt from everything, like the world was fading, leaving me behind. Our life together had been the kind of ordinary story most people could relate to. We met in high school, stuck together through all the ups and downs. We had Sally not long after getting married. It wasn't a shotgun wedding. She wasn't the reason we tied the knot, but she was part of the plan. We both had steady jobs, nothing too flashy, but enough to live comfortably. Our house was paid off years ago, and we had some savings. We took family trips, shared quiet evenings, and though closeness had slowed down, it was still there. We still loved each other, I thought, and that was enough. We had a future, or at least I believed we did, but that was before today. Annie didn't stop. Her face reddened with every word. Her voice grew sharper, faster, more insistent, as though she were trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. "Arthur, look at me," she commanded. Her voice sliced through the fog in my brain. It was getting harder to focus, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. "Sign the papers," she ordered. She pointed to the pile of documents on the table. The words blurred together as I stared at them, my eyes swimming. She spoke again, demanding, but it was like her voice was coming from far away. I couldn't make myself reach for the pen, couldn't bring myself to look down at the papers. The kitchen felt strangely darker, even though the lights were on, and I could feel the weight of it all pressing in on me, making it harder to breathe. I was shutting down inside, but my body wouldn't move. I didn't react, and the more I stayed still, the angrier Annie became. Her voice climbed higher and higher, until, in frustration, she slapped me. I didn't feel it, didn't even register the pain, but I knew it would leave a mark. Still, I stayed frozen, unable to respond. The darkness around me felt deeper, more suffocating.
It had been a strange day. The university had canceled classes because of an accident, and the power had gone out. We were all sent home early, but something didn't sit right with me. When I walked into the house, it felt wrong. The lights were on, but my mom's car was gone. My dad's was parked in the driveway, but the stillness of it all unnerved me. I dropped my bag on the kitchen chair and saw Dad sitting at the table. He didn't move or acknowledge me. He just stared ahead, completely still, his expression vacant, like he was somewhere far away. On the table in front of him was an open bottle of Mom's wine, a nearly empty glass, and a mess of papers scattered across the surface. I walked up behind him and gently put my hand on his shoulder. "Dad?" No response. I moved around the table to face him, and when I looked into his eyes, I gasped. His eyes were glazed, almost white, and tears had dried on his face. His gaze was unfocused, like he wasn't even aware I was there. A trail of saliva dripped down onto his lap, but he didn't blink or react in any way. "Dad, please, wake up!" Panic surged through me, my heart pounding as I grabbed his hand, shaking it desperately, but there was no response. Nothing. I took a step back, my mind racing. I couldn't get him to answer. I had to stay calm. I repeated to myself, "Slow down, Sally. He needs help." I pulled out my phone and called emergency, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened, telling them my father, Arthur Smith, wasn't responding. They asked for my details and address, and I gave them everything I could. They said help would arrive in about 10 minutes, but that felt like an eternity. I sat next to him, holding his hand, speaking softly, reassuring him everything would be fine, but inside, I was terrified. Dad had always been there for me, attending every school play, every recital, every event. When I first picked up the violin, he sat through hours of awful practice sessions, always encouraging me. For my 16th birthday, he saved up to buy me a Haydn violin. It wasn't the best, but it was special because it came from him. Now, here I was, sitting beside him waiting for help to arrive. But I had no idea what was happening. Why was he like this? Where was Mom? Then I saw the papers. Petition for divorce was printed across the top, and everything clicked into place. My mother was divorcing him. The reason he was like this, the reason he was completely unresponsive, was that she had left him. The papers and the wine bottle told the whole story. She had handed him the divorce papers and walked away, leaving him shattered. A few minutes later, the ambulance arrived, and they rushed my dad off to the hospital. I locked up the house, got in my car, and followed them, my mind racing. I called Grandma, Rhonda, Dad's sister, and his best friend. Then I called his manager at work to explain Dad wouldn't be in. Everyone was asking for updates. His manager said they'd sort out emergency leave for him, but the call I was dreading most was the one to my mother. The phone rang for a few seconds before she picked up. "Hi, sweetie. How was your day?" she said, as though nothing was wrong. I could hardly hold back the disbelief in my voice. "Seriously? Just seriously?" She wasn't stupid. She knew I'd find out sooner or later. She knew exactly what I'd see when I walked in the door, and by now I was certain she knew I'd put it all together. "Where are you, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I left Dad." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. She didn't know how to respond. "So you just left him? Left your husband, my father, without a second thought?" My voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice annoyingly calm. "I tried to talk to him about Paul, but he didn't understand. I thought it'd be better if I just left. Let him come to terms with it on his own." Her attempt at sounding casual was infuriating. She didn't care about explaining anything. She just bailed on him when he needed her most. "So, you abandoned him when he was already in a bad place?" I pressed, unable to hide my disgust. "Are you really that cold?" "Sweetie, don't be mad," she replied, too relaxed for the gravity of the situation. "I know it's a shock, but your dad will be fine. I'm just asking for what's mine, and Paul is waiting to marry me." Her words felt like they had no weight, no sincerity. It was just all empty talk. "You haven't seen me angry yet, Mom," I hissed, the frustration boiling over. "And just so you know, I'm on my way to the hospital. Dad's in an ambulance, and when I got home, he looked like he had a stroke." "Oh, Sally, I'm so sorry to hear that," she said, but there was no real concern in her voice. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Is Paul the same one from your work?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes, darling." "So, let me guess," I pressed. "He's probably younger than you, and you've been at this for how long?" 6 months, she replied. 6 months, I repeated, my anger spiking. 6 months you've been sleeping with someone from your office behind Dad's back? lying to both of us, and now look where we are. I couldn't stop myself now, and Dad had no idea, judging by the state you just left him in. How the hell did you think any of this would be okay? She sighed. Well, I didn't expect it to go down like this. But once Paul and I live together, you'll see. We're made for each other. We? I said, fury rising. You think I'll just walk away from my father to move in with you and your pathetic boyfriend? I was shaking with rage. I'm hanging up now before I say something I regret. But just so we're clear, I'm staying with Dad. I'm not going anywhere near Paul, and you're not going to guilt-trip me into supporting your nonsense. Sally Smith, she snapped, her tone livid. I'm your mother, and you will not talk to me like that. I didn't say a word. Then we're done here, I said coldly before ending the call. If she thought I'd ever accept her behavior, she was out of her mind. She tried calling back a few times, then started dialing Dad's phone, which was useless since I had it with me. I ignored every call. When I got to the hospital, Dad had already been admitted and was being monitored in a room. Rhonda, my aunt and the family lawyer, was there waiting for me. She'd received a few calls from Mom, but didn't know the full story yet. When I filled her in, her face turned bright red, and I thought steam was going to start coming out of her ears. Sally, do you have the papers that woman left for my brother? She asked, her voice tight with rage. Yeah, I do, I replied. We settled in beside Dad while Rhonda went over the divorce papers. She read through them, muttering curses under her breath, while doctors and nurses came in and out to check on Dad. Well, bad news, honey. Your mom's divorcing your father, Rhonda said, flipping through the documents. According to these papers, this has been going on for over 2 months, and she was planning to file this week, just in time to avoid getting hit with a bigger legal bill. I didn't feel much. My mom had shattered everything. I didn't want Dad back with her now, not after what she'd done. It felt surreal. I had always looked up to my mom, but now I couldn't even stomach the thought of her. Rhonda continued. The good news is she hired a sketchy lawyer. She'll have to pay a lot just for the divorce, and even more if it goes to court. Rhonda gave a small grin. Your dad, on the other hand, has the best lawyer in town, and, lucky for him, he gets the family discount. We shared a brief dark smile. Also, some of these demands are just outrageous. She wants half of everything. The house, the savings, plus alimony and child support. I'm guessing you're not planning to move in with her anytime soon? I shook my head firmly. Good. Well, Rhonda said, tapping her pen on the paper, I've got a few ideas, but we'll need to wait and see what happens with your dad. He might need some time to recover, and your mother could be in serious trouble for abandoning him. If this goes any further, she could be facing charges for mental cruelty. I nodded slowly, still processing everything. Rhonda was our best shot now. She'd always had our backs. Mom was going to pay, one way or another. The days that followed seemed to blur together as doctors came in and out to check on Dad. Physically, he was perfectly healthy, but mentally, he remained unresponsive. I spent most of my time at his side, sitting in a hospital chair with my laptop and textbooks, trying to study when I could. Family members came by to give me breaks, and I'd go home to grab a few hours of sleep, change clothes, and then come back to the hospital. When I was alone, I allowed myself to cry more than I'd like to admit. One of the more surprising moments came when the owner of Dad's company came to visit. I had met his manager, Tom, before, but I had never seen the boss in person. To my surprise, it was a woman, Tina Williams. She was striking, with long, raven black hair, glowing tan skin, and piercing blue eyes that made everyone around her notice. I could tell from the way people reacted that she was a presence, someone who commanded attention without trying. It turned out my father had been part of a group of co-workers who had supported Tina a few years ago when she went through a difficult divorce. Her ex-husband had tried to take everything from her, her daughter, most of her savings, and even part of her business, until Dad introduced her to Aunt Rhonda. Rhonda had turned things around for Tina, securing her both her business and her daughter's future. Tina visited Dad several times, always bringing cards from everyone at work, and would sit by his side holding his hand while telling him stories from the office. It was clear that Dad had been the life of the party at work, always keeping things light and fun, and people missed him dearly. To give you a bit of context, my dad was an accountant working for a company that helped banks process payments to other financial institutions. It was a demanding job, but apparently, he had a way of making the workplace a little brighter for everyone around him. About 2 weeks later, I came back to the hospital after a short trip home. When I walked in, I saw Rhonda and Tina finishing up a conversation. Their tone was tense, but it was clear they weren't arguing with each other. The target of their frustration was my mother. "Your mom sent Tina a letter demanding half of all Dad's bonuses from the last few years," Rhonda explained. "It didn't matter that the money had already been paid. She wants 50% of it deposited into a specific account within 30 days, or she's threatening to sue." Rhonda's expression was almost carnivory as she added, "It seems like your mother and her new boyfriend are running low on cash, especially since I froze all their joint assets while Arthur is in the hospital." I couldn't help but laugh. "Well, this morning I got my first message from Mom in 2 weeks, a text asking for money." I didn't reply to her message. I was still furious with what she had done. She hadn't once asked about Dad since I told her what had happened. Meanwhile, Tina had become deeply concerned about how Dad was feeling emotionally. Every time Mom's name came up, Tina's eyes would narrow and her voice would drop, clearly showing how much she disliked her. I sometimes thought I saw actual flames flicker in her eyes. I just hope they never have to be in the same room, I thought. Mom might end up burning it all down. Though my feelings for my mother had soured, she was still my mother. It hurt knowing she'd destroyed the most wonderful person I knew. "Sally, if it weren't for your father, I wouldn't have my Clarissa or my business," Tina said quietly. "A lot of people helped me during my roughest time, but your dad really went out of his way. He listened without judging me or my ex-husband. He just let me vent, and no one else ever did that for me. He even introduced me to your aunt, ensuring I had the support I needed." Tina paused, her eyes softening. "If he were a single man, I'd be chasing him down." I smiled a little. Well, he'll be a single man soon enough. It was as if a light bulb went off in both Tina and Rhonda's heads. Rhonda laughed, and Tina smiled warmly. "Thank you, Sally," Tina said, her voice full of gratitude. "I really needed that." "I still can't believe your mom did this to him," Tina added. "How could she walk away from such an incredible man?" Tina had to head back to the office, but before she left, she walked up to Dad's bed. Rhonda and I watched as she leaned down and gently kissed him on the lips. Tina turned to us with a smile, but her expression shifted in an instant when Dad groaned softly.
I woke up with the sensation of soft lips against mine, applying just the right pressure. It wasn't an invasive kiss. It was tender, full of intention and warmth. The sound of medical equipment beeped in the background, and I felt the pain in every muscle of my body. I opened my eyes, expecting Annie to be there, hovering above me, but instead, I saw Tina's face, her smile comforting. Sally, Rhonda, and Tina stood beside me. "It's okay, Daddy. You're going to be all right," Sally reassured me. As my memories clicked back into place, I realized the last thing I remembered was Annie telling me she was leaving. The truth hit me like a wave. "What happened?" I asked weakly. The three women filled me in on the details. How Sally had found me unresponsive and called for an ambulance. How she'd uncovered divorce papers that revealed Annie had been cheating for years. 2 weeks, Rhonda said. I turned to Tina. "Did you kiss me?" Tina blushed. "Yes, sorry about that. I was just heading to the office to say goodbye," she added. I smiled. "It's fine, really. Everything's okay." The next few hours were a blur of doctors and tests. Exams, blood draws, MRIs. Tina canceled her office visit and stayed with me, along with Rhonda and Sally. Among the doctors who came in was a psychologist. I told him about the moment I came home to find Annie drinking alone and telling me she was leaving. As her anger escalated, I felt the world around me dim and fade. The last thing I remembered was Annie punching me in the face and screaming, though I couldn't make out the words. The three women gasped when they heard about the misuse while I was unresponsive. "Dad, when do you think this happened?" Sally asked. "I'd say around 5:30, I replied. "Why?" "Because it was after 7:30 when I got home and found you," Sally explained. "So Mom must have left you there alone for a while." The psychologist spoke up. "It's not uncommon for someone in your situation to be misused while they're unresponsive. Shock can trigger this sort of response. In your case, the shock likely came from hearing your wife announce she was leaving. It's extreme, but it makes sense. Rhonda added, when Arthur was younger, there was a bully who used to tease him. One day he was found lying in the park, unconscious. Our parents didn't think much of it, but he woke up the next day, and when he told them about the bully, they went to his parents. After that, the boy apologized and never bothered Arthur again. I smiled at the memory. I don't think it was genuine, but after that, he left me alone. The psychologist grinned. It seems like there's a pattern. The mind doesn't always react predictably, but given that this has happened before, it makes sense that it could happen again. I frowned, and the psychologist gave me a reassuring smile. Don't worry too much. With the love and support of these wonderful women, even if something happens again, you'll be in good hands. I was exhausted. It might sound strange considering I'd just spent 2 weeks in a hospital bed, but I was drained. I decided to send the 3 women home for some rest, telling them to come back tomorrow to check on me. Over the next couple of days, I started to feel like myself again. Tina brought me a work laptop and gave me a few light tasks to keep me busy. Rhonda stopped by to show me the updated divorce papers and to get my signature so she could begin the process of dissolving my marriage to Annie. Rhonda also brought a young detective named Karen Hill with her. Detective Hill spent over an hour questioning me about that night with Annie. After she thanked me, she told us we would receive her official report in a few days. I wasn't entirely sure if we were pursuing legal action against Annie, but Rhonda was already taking charge. "Leave it all to me," she said, with a reassuring kiss on my forehead before she left. By that afternoon, I was discharged from the hospital, just as Sally had predicted. She helped me home, and to my surprise, Tina was waiting for me. She assisted Sally in getting me into her large SUV. That evening, Tina stayed for dinner. We ordered takeout, and she helped clean up afterward. We spent a couple of hours watching TV before she said her goodbyes. As Sally hugged Tina, I walked her to her car. "Tina, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done over these past few weeks," I said. Tina smiled. "Well, once you're feeling better, you can take me out for dinner and dancing." I blushed. "I just left the hospital a few hours ago, and the woman who kissed me awake already has a date planned," I joked. "Next Friday evening, after work," Tina replied. "That'll give you nearly 2 weeks to recover." She gave me a warm hug, lingering a little longer than usual. As she drove off, I couldn't help but wonder for a moment about the strange woman I had been married to for almost 25 years. Over the next few days, Sally, Rhonda, and Tina continued to look after me. It was comforting to have such good people around. But on Friday afternoon, Rhonda dropped a bombshell. "Annie was arrested today," she said. "What happened?" I asked, stunned. "After your statement to the police, a warrant was issued for Annie's arrest for mental cruelty toward a person with disabilities," Rhonda explained. "Since you were unable to defend yourself at the time and she left you alone for an unknown amount of time, they've got a solid case." Tina, who had joined us for dinner, raised a concerned eyebrow. "What does this mean for the divorce?" Rhonda gave a confident smile. "It's moving forward. It should take about 3 months. If Annie wants to contest it, I'll pull out all the stops. But that will only drag things out and hurt her more in the end." I nodded. "Annie won't get her hands on any of the bonus money she tried to take from you, Tina. I filed charges against her for extortion and mental cruelty. This won't change much, but it'll stop her from touching things that aren't hers. She'll probably be out in a few days, none the worse for wear, and head right back to her boyfriend. What I'm focused on is settling the divorce quickly using Arthur's hospital visit as leverage. After that, I have plans. Depending on Annie's response, I'll make sure Arthur doesn't lose anything important." Sally looked at Rhonda. "How long will the divorce take, Aunt Rhonda?" "I'm hopeful it'll be wrapped up in 3 months. If Annie fights it, we'll stretch it out longer, but it'll hurt her in the long run," Rhonda answered with a satisfied grin. Later that evening, I walked Tina to her car while Sally helped Clarissa into the back seat. As Tina gave me another hug, she surprised me with a quick kiss. "Arthur, I know you're married, and I respect that. I'm not going to rush you, but I want you to know I want you. I've wanted you for a long time, but I would never go after a married man or break vows. I've been on the other side of that, and I don't want to do that to anyone else, even if their marriage is falling apart." I looked into her piercing blue eyes for a moment before brushing a strand of her dark hair away from her face. I leaned in to kiss her, but this time, it wasn't a soft peck. I kissed her deeply, passionately, and for about 30 seconds, we shared a connection that left both of us breathless. As I pulled away, Tina's eyes were closed, her lips lingering on mine as if savoring the moment. I smiled. "Just so you know, I'm confirming your claim." We turned around to see the girls watching us. Clarissa was clapping, and Sally had a mischievous grin on her face. As Tina and Clarissa drove off, Sally hugged me tightly, and we waved goodbye. The following months were full of emotional ups and downs. Annie wanted the divorce to be finalized quickly, but she wasn't satisfied with the terms. It seemed like Paul had a heavy influence over her, convincing her she deserved the lion's share of the assets. He spun a web of lies, and while she probably knew better after all these years, she still let herself be swayed. As the demands for the settlement became more and more unreasonable, Rhonda made one phone call to Annie's lawyer. I'm not sure what was said, but the very next day, all of Annie's objections to the settlement vanished. Tina and I began spending every Friday evening together. Meanwhile, Sally took on the responsibility of picking up Clarissa from school and watching her, giving Tina and me the freedom to go out to dinner, have coffee, watch a show, or sometimes even dance. We kept things simple, just holding hands and sharing a kiss here and there. But something told me that the night the divorce was finalized would be different. Work was going well. Our financial institution was profitable, but we weren't exactly on the cutting edge. We did our jobs, got paid well, and had a good time as a team. Word got around the office about Tina and me becoming a couple. While everyone seemed happy for us, I had to tone down my usual behavior. My manager, who reported directly to Tina, made sure there were no rumors circulating about us, considering I was now working closely with his boss. About 3.5 months later, we got the notice that the divorce would be finalized in a week, starting the following Thursday. There was no trial, but Annie requested a final meeting before the ruling. I agreed to meet with her, and we decided she would come to our house to speak with both Sally and me. I took the afternoon off to cook dinner, a dish we all loved, lamb chops with dumplings and gravy. I hoped it would make the evening a bit less tense. Sally came home around 5:30, showered and changed. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Annie stood there, and for the first time in a long while, I actually saw her clearly. I hadn't really described her before, but now seemed like the right time. A few months ago, Annie had been an attractive housewife in her early 40s, short brown hair, a curvy figure, and despite carrying a little extra weight, she was still undeniably beautiful. But the woman standing at my door was hardly recognizable. She had gained a lot of weight. Her face was fuller, her cheeks puffy, and her belly, once just a little protruding, now hung over her waistband. The shapely figure I had once admired was gone. She wore loose, baggy clothes, trying to hide her weight gain. I'm not one to judge someone for their size, but this wasn't Annie. I must have looked shocked, because Annie winced, but didn't say anything. "Hi, Annie. Please come in," I said, guiding her to the kitchen. I offered her a glass of wine, which she accepted. We made small talk for a few minutes. She asked about my work and if I was taking care of myself, while I asked her the same. I didn't mention her appearance, though I couldn't help but notice how different she looked. "Paul wanted me to gain weight," she said, almost defensively. "He didn't like how thin I was, so we worked on that." She was hinting at the unspoken. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel concern. "You don't approve, do you?" she asked, looking at me. "No, Annie, I don't," I replied honestly. "When we were together, you were healthy and in great shape. I'm shocked by what I'm seeing. You don't look well, and if I wasn't so hurt by what you did, I'd be very worried about your health. But I don't think you care, do you?" Her expression faltered. "You and Sally, you're both happy and healthy without me." "Well, part of me still cares," I said, my voice softening. "But when you left me here, abandoned me when I needed help, I don't know how to feel about that." She sighed. "I deserve it. I did something terrible, didn't I?" Just then, Sally walked in, fresh from her shower. "You did a horrible thing, Mom," Sally said, her voice cutting through the tension. "You destroyed a family, then walked away like it didn't matter. And I don't know why Dad's even letting you be here tonight." "Sally, calm down," I intervened. "Your mother knows the situation. She knows how all of us feel. She asked for this meeting, so let's at least listen to what she has to say." Sally wasn't happy, that was clear. She hadn't spoken to Annie since the incident, and the tension between them was palpable. It was time to change the subject. "Look, difficult conversations aren't best done on an empty stomach," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Let's eat first." Dinner was served, but the atmosphere was tense. No one spoke much, though there were plenty of side glances, especially from Sally, who couldn't stop staring at her mother. Afterward, as I cleared the table, Annie asked if she could speak to Sally alone. "Not a chance," I said. "You can tell me whatever you want in front of both of us." Sally was adamant she wouldn't be alone with her mother, and I could see that Annie was starting to understand why. The expression on her face was exactly the same as it had been that fateful night when everything fell apart. Annie hesitated before speaking. "I didn't want to do this in front of you, but I'll say it anyway. Sally, I want to ask you to forgive me. I know I made a terrible mistake, and I don't want to be apart from my daughter forever." She then turned to me. "There's one more thing, but I'd rather say it privately." "Sorry, Mom, but if you can't say it to both of us, then I don't want to hear it," Sally snapped. Without waiting for her mother to respond, she stood up and stormed off, slamming her bedroom door behind her. "I wanted everything to go better," Annie said quietly, almost to herself. "I think it went as well as it could have," I replied, trying to remain calm. "Really?" Annie asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "Yes," I answered with a deep sigh. "But you need to understand that the people in this house don't exactly like you right now." Annie opened her mouth to argue, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Let me finish. First, you had an affair with that idiot Paul. Then you hid it from both Sally and me. You blindsided me with divorce papers, and when I couldn't react fast enough, you slapped me. Then you left me, abandoned me when I was clearly in no shape to be left alone. And when Sally found me, you never even checked in on me." Annie looked at me wide-eyed, as if I had just slapped her back. "And when Sally was clearly worried about her father, you showed no concern for me whatsoever. You made unreasonable demands at work, and when you came here tonight, you made it all about you. You asked for forgiveness from Sally, but you didn't apologize to her once." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Yes, Annie, I think that went really well, all things considered." Her eyes were downcast, and I could see tears forming, but not falling. I wasn't sure if they were for me, for Sally, or for herself, but it didn't matter. "Tomorrow, our divorce will be final," I told her. "If there's nothing else, then I think we've wrapped up your final request." I stood up and walked to the door, opening it for her. Annie lingered in the doorway for a moment, then looked back at me. "Arthur, we really did have some good years, didn't we?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, Annie, most of our time together was wonderful. You were a great wife, a wonderful lover, and a good mother. I don't know what Paul did to you, but the woman I fell in love with is gone. All I see now is someone who's been manipulated into becoming something unrecognizable." She didn't respond, just stared at the floor. Then, softly, she asked, "You really mean it, don't you?" "I do," I said, my voice firm. Annie turned to leave, but stopped one last time. "Arthur, about the house and the money, Paul told me I should ask." So that's why she was here. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about money. I laughed bitterly, and Annie looked at me confused. "Go back to Paul," I said, my voice cold. "Tell him that by tomorrow you'll get your share of the savings and equity in the house. It'll be transferred to the bank account Rhonda set up." She looked at me, still confused. "And listen," I added, "keep that money away from Paul. If he gets his hands on it, you won't have it for long." The next morning, the divorce papers were finalized. Annie and I were officially no longer married. I felt a slight sadness, but it was hardly anything compared to the relief and freedom I felt. The past few months had been tough, but now I was free to move forward with my life. At 48, I knew there was still so much ahead of me. Rhonda called to let me know she'd be bringing pizza over that night. Sally also stopped by the office for lunch. We ended up talking about her mom and reminiscing about better times when our family was still intact. Sally didn't have much affection for her mother, but I could tell she missed the woman Annie used to be. Honestly, I missed that version of her too. We had many good years together. It was clear Sally and Tina shared a moment when she left the office. Less than 5 minutes after Sally walked out, Tina called me into her office. She shut the door behind me and kissed me like the world was ending. Honestly, I kissed her back the same way. "Can I officially say you're mine now, Arthur?" she asked, her lips still near my neck, where I could feel the warm spot from her kiss. "I think you already have," I replied with a grin. That night, we had a celebration dinner with Sally, Rhonda, Tina, and Clarissa. We toasted to my newfound freedom and to the fresh start ahead. Later that Friday, after the kids had gone to bed, Tina and I took our relationship to the next level. I must have done something right because for the rest of the weekend, every time she sat down, she gave a little wince of pain. But those fiery, smoldering looks she gave me told me it was all worth it. By the time 6 months had passed, we were married in a small ceremony by a lake with close friends and colleagues from work. We had initially planned to wait, but we wanted to tie the knot before Sally and Clarissa's little brother arrived. 5 years later, Tina and I were out to dinner with Sally and her boyfriend when we were interrupted by a 5-year-old voice asking, "Dad, who's that lady staring at us?" We all turned to see Annie, now thinner, sitting across the room. She was staring at us with an expression that made it clear she wasn't happy with where things had gone. We hadn't heard from her in years, and she had never made an effort to reach out to Sally. I excused myself and went over to her. "Hi, Annie," I said. "Hey, Arthur," she responded, her eyes down on her chicken salad. "How have you been?" "You were right about him," she said suddenly. "Paul convinced me that he was my soulmate and you were nothing. But when I didn't get the money up front, he convinced me to gain weight, saying it was because he loved me and preferred larger women. After the divorce, I didn't listen to your advice about keeping the money to myself. He blew through it in a few months and then left me, without even marrying me." Her story wasn't the happy ending I'd found, but I couldn't help but feel a little sympathy. Still, I wasn't completely over the past, especially the way she had walked out on us. She was fighting back tears now, and I could see the remorse in her eyes. "I was wrong," Annie said, her voice shaking. "I know you can't forgive me, but I'm so sorry, Arthur. I left the only man who ever truly loved me, and I almost destroyed you in the process." Sally had quietly approached us and stood next to me. She had heard her mother's apology. I squeezed her hand and smiled at her. I could see her softening toward her mother, maybe for the first time in years. Sally reached out to her mom, her face full of compassion. Seeing Sally extend her hand made Annie panic. She tried to stand up and walk away, but Sally stepped in front of her. "Mom, stop. You're not going anywhere." Sally slid into the booth next to Annie, and I joined them. Tina looked on and gave me a nod. For the next hour, mother and daughter talked. There were a lot of tears, but they were good tears. Healing ones. By the end of it, Sally and I brought Annie to our table and introduced her to everyone. Annie didn't seem thrilled to be introduced as Aunt Annie to Keegan, but she took it in stride. From that point on, we allowed Annie back into our lives, slowly at first. Sally began to rebuild her relationship with her mother. They had coffee together every couple of weeks, and over time, the trust between them grew, little by little. When Sally got married, Annie played a role in the wedding as the mother of the bride. Tina invited her over for dinner occasionally. At first, I think it was more out of a sense of justice. Tina had gained a lot after Annie had walked away from our family. But eventually, Tina and Annie developed an odd yet genuine friendship. I never fully understood it, but it worked for them. Rhonda, on the other hand, never forgave Annie. She was always polite, but there was no mistaking the coldness between them. As for me, with Tina's support, I did a little post-divorce counseling with Annie. We talked through everything that had happened more than 5 years ago. The therapist suggested Annie might have had some hormonal issues at the time, but Annie denied it. "No," she said firmly. "What I did wasn't about hormones. I threw away the best thing in my life. Arthur, a loving husband, and Sally, a daughter who wanted me. No hormone imbalance could explain why I threw everything away for a guy who was nothing but a liar. I let a fool convince me to destroy my life." She looked at me with a sad smile. "You and Sally deserved so much better from me." She wiped away the tears that had started to fall. "It took 5 years to reconnect. 5 years I'll never get back. I'm thankful every day that Arthur let me back into his life. And Tina, too." She blushed as she said Tina's name. "She had every right to hate me, but she didn't. She treated me like a person. Honestly, she was lucky," Annie continued. "She got everything I tossed away, and I'll never stop paying for that." That therapy session was helpful for me in some ways, mostly confirming that neither Sally nor I were to blame for Annie's actions. She was right. I had no regrets. Tina and I had created a strong family, and we were happy. As for Paul, he hadn't fared well. He moved away to another state and tried once again to charm his way into a married woman's life, but this time, the husband caught him. The result? Paul was left neutered. He got 10 years in prison, though rumor had it that he might be out soon, if Rhonda's sources were correct. Tina and I are deeply in love. I never imagined I could love anyone like I loved Annie, but Tina proved me wrong. She gave me not just her love, but her soul, completely and unconditionally. We still work at our company, and I still have the same job. We've had our ups and downs, but communication is always the priority, no matter what. Tina's body is still incredible, and we continue to have a very active and passionate relationship. During vacations, we've been known to sneak off and make love in exotic locations. A glance is all it takes for us to fall back into each other's arms. One day, after we had just finished making love and were getting dressed, we walked into the kitchen and found Sally and Annie chatting. It turns out Sally was pregnant, and the buzz in the room was about my first grandchild. Tina looked at me with a playful smirk. "You need to tell me what you're feeding Arthur. I think Fred could use some of that." We all laughed and I blushed. Annie had been dating recently, but it seemed like things were starting to get serious with a man named Fred. Sally teased, "Oh, Mom, you know Dad was a man on a mission once he got his health back." "Since when?" Annie asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, you know," Sally grinned mischievously. "I think his libido went up a few notches since he woke up after everything happened." Annie went quiet, looking away. Sally laughed, Tina blushed, and I just leaned back, grinning. I felt that familiar heat rise within me as I looked at Tina, and before long I was back in the bedroom with her, locking the door behind us. And yes, I was definitely checked out. The months that followed the divorce were a blur of change and self-discovery. I had been plunged into a sea of uncertainty, but slowly, piece by piece, I found my footing. Life, in a strange way, began to feel like it was starting anew. The things I thought I had lost forever, my sense of self, my confidence, and even my capacity to love again, were not gone at all. They had simply been buried beneath the rubble of betrayal and heartache, waiting for the right time to resurface. Tina was my anchor during this time. She had a way of quietly reminding me of the value of patience and kindness, even when I didn't feel like I had the strength for either. Her understanding, paired with her fierce devotion, provided the stability I had lacked for so long. I had been broken, no question, but she didn't judge me for it. Instead, she gave me the space to heal, and she did it in a way that made me feel like I wasn't a burden. I often thought about how different she was from Annie, how Tina's love was neither a demand nor a performance, but a quiet, steady presence. The first few months with Tina were about finding our rhythm. At first, it wasn't easy. I was still haunted by memories of the past, and Tina, though patient and loving, had her own battles to fight. She had become my partner not just in love, but in a shared mission to help me rebuild my life. We started slow, weekends spent watching old movies, long drives that didn't go anywhere, dinner dates where the conversation flowed easily. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people figuring out what came next. Sally, as always, was my rock. Though she was navigating her own journey into adulthood, she always made time for me. We spent hours talking about everything, her music, her future, and what had happened between me and Annie. It was impossible for me to completely shield her from the pain of what her mother had done. But Sally was resilient. She never blamed me, and in many ways, she became the adult in our relationship, pushing me to move forward when I felt stuck. Her belief in me was unwavering, and it was something I clung to. I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. There was a time when I thought I couldn't bear the weight of everything. The shock of Annie leaving, the way she just walked out and left me there, abandoned when I was most vulnerable. The confusion, the feeling of being suffocated by everything that had crumbled around me. And yet here I was, standing stronger than I had in years. The process of letting go, of truly accepting that Annie and I were over, wasn't as painful as I had imagined. It was freeing. The chains had been broken, and I was finally breathing again. At work, things started to shift as well. My role, while never glamorous, had always been steady, and I found a renewed sense of purpose in it. I started taking on more responsibility, contributing ideas, and feeling like I had something to offer beyond the confines of my broken marriage. When I began working more closely with Tina at her company, it felt natural. She trusted me in ways that made me feel valued, not just as her partner, but as a person. There was no competition between us, no power struggle, just mutual respect and support. The thing that stood out the most during this time was the way Sally and Tina began to bond. Tina's daughter, Clarissa, and Sally formed an unexpected but undeniable friendship. It was strange at first watching them share inside jokes and act like sisters. But it was also beautiful. I had never seen Sally so open with anyone outside of our immediate family. It was clear that Tina's presence in our lives was something Sally needed, someone who offered not just love, but also a model for strength and independence. Tina's warmth extended beyond just me and Sally. She started inviting Annie back into our lives in small ways. At first, it was awkward, to say the least. Annie's apology was a slow, painful process, but she seemed to truly want to make amends, especially with Sally. For me, it wasn't about forgetting what she had done, but about finding a way to live in a space where I could move forward without harboring bitterness. It was clear that Annie's journey wasn't over. She still had much to reconcile within herself. But for the sake of Sally, I allowed her back into our lives, little by little. The day Sally told me she was pregnant was one of the most surreal moments of my life. In many ways, it felt like a full-circle moment. I had spent years teaching her how to navigate the world, and now she was teaching me how to navigate this new chapter of life. I was going to be a grandfather, something I had never imagined for myself. It was a new kind of love, a love that transcended time and carried the weight of generational continuity. Sally, full of ambition and passion for her music, was now beginning a family of her own, and in that moment I couldn't have been prouder. The healing process for Annie was much slower. Her appearance had changed. She had gained weight, and the vibrancy she once had seemed faded. She was different, physically and emotionally, but the most striking change was the regret that now seemed to hang over her like a cloud. I could see it in the way she spoke to Sally, the quiet apologies laced with guilt. And yet, her journey was hers to make. I had done everything I could to help her see the consequences of her actions, and now it was up to her to find her way. She had done irreparable damage, but as time passed, I started to see glimmers of the woman I had once loved. Annie's efforts to rebuild her life were messy, but she tried. She ended up with Fred, a man who seemed to offer the stability she had longed for. It was a strange kind of peace that settled over me when I saw them together. Fred seemed to be good for her, and while I didn't want her back, I knew that this new chapter in her life was what she needed. In a way, it was comforting to see her settle into something. Whether or not it was love was a question I didn't feel the need to answer anymore. Tina and I continued to grow closer, our bond cemented not just by our love, but by the shared vision we had for our future. When I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the loss, I couldn't help but be grateful for the life I was now living. I wasn't the same man I'd been when I married Annie. I'd been tested in ways I never imagined, and though the road had been rough, it had led me here, to Tina, to a family that was stronger than I ever thought possible. One evening, while we were sitting in our living room, Sally came to us with news that took us by surprise. She had decided to go on a short tour with her orchestra, something she had always dreamed of doing. It was a proud moment for me. She had worked so hard for this, and I was thrilled that she was finally getting the chance to step into the spotlight. It was also a moment of personal growth for me. I had always been her protector, her guide, but now I was learning to let go and trust that she was ready for the world. Tina and I, ever the supportive partners, decided to take a much-needed vacation. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a quiet weekend in the mountains. But it felt like a celebration of where we were, of what we had become together. As we sat by the fire looking out at the stars, I realized that my life had gone full circle. I had once thought that I would never recover from losing Annie, but now here I was, surrounded by people who loved me, building a future that was mine to shape. The day Sally gave birth to her child was the final chapter in a long and emotional journey. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Holding my grandchild in my arms for the first time felt like a divine gift. Tina, Sally, and I spent hours marveling over the tiny miracle that had arrived. There, in the quiet hospital room, I realized that the pain of the past had been worth it. It had led me to this moment, to this new beginning. Years passed, and life settled into a beautiful routine. Sally's career flourished, and Tina and I built a life together that was full of love and laughter. Annie, while still a part of our lives in some small way, had become a distant memory. Her story was no longer intertwined with mine, and I was at peace with that. I'd learned that closure didn't always mean forgetting. It meant finding the strength to move forward. Tina and I still work together, still share our dreams, and still find moments of joy in the little things. We've become a team in every sense of the word. We've weathered the storms of life, and each time we've come out stronger on the other side. I never imagined I could be this happy again, but here I am, living a life full of love, laughter, and a deep sense of fulfillment. And so as I sit back and reflect on the years that have passed, I realize that life is never linear. It's full of twists, turns, and moments that test us in ways we never expect. But with the right people by your side, the storms can pass, and the sun will shine once again. And in the end, that's what matters most. The people who stand with you, the love that holds you together, and the future that still awaits.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My ex-wife and I had been together for 6 years and finally got married this past February. I truly thought we made a fantastic couple. We did so much together, and I always try to keep things fresh and interesting. I'd take her on random dates to new places, surprise her with little romantic gestures here and there. But then, about 4 or 5 months ago, she became upset over not having many friends outside of me. So, when she joined an online meetup group and started making new friends, I was really supportive. I felt it was healthy. After all, it's not fair to expect one person to be your only source of happiness. A month or so went by, and I noticed she was spending more and more time with one guy in particular from that group. I'll admit, I felt a bit jealous, but I thought, what the hell, I trust her completely. She deserves friends. As the weeks passed, though, things started to feel a little off. She began hanging out at this guy's house, where he lived with a few housemates. She'd tell me they were just playing board games with the others and would even send me pictures from time to time, showing me what they were doing. I'd think, all right, that looks innocent enough, and for a while, it did help ease my worries. But my gut started throwing up red flags. She began texting him constantly, even in the evenings. She'd take her phone with her into the shower, which she'd never done before. One night, I remember her saying, "I'm really tired. I think I'm going to bed early." I replied, "All right, get some rest." A couple of hours later, I went into the bedroom to grab something and saw her still wide awake, lying in bed, texting on her phone. It was the same story on multiple nights. I couldn't help but wonder if she was talking to him. By this point, I was feeling extremely uncomfortable with the whole situation. The amount of time she was spending at this guy's house, especially after spending entire days out with him, felt way beyond appropriate. So, I decided to talk to her about it. I told her, "Look, I don't mind that you're friends with him, but the amount of time you're spending with him is just too much. It doesn't sit right with me." She shot back, "You're being jealous and needy. I enjoy spending time with him. We have a lot in common." Fast forward a week or so, and one day she told me she was going into town to find a present for her niece. But something in my gut told me she was lying. I knew where this guy lived because I dropped him off there after a night out once. So, feeling uneasy, I drove over to his house. When I got there and saw her car parked outside, my heart sank. I started hyperventilating and felt like the ground was spinning beneath me. It was like I was drunk as I stumbled back to my car. On the drive home, I was crying so hard I could barely see the road. I was so out of it that I nearly got into an accident after running a red light. Once I got home, I tried to pull myself together. I paced around, taking deep breaths, slowly feeling a bit calmer. Not long after, she called me. I answered, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "How was your day?" I asked. "It was good," she replied casually, "but I didn't find anything for my niece." "I wonder why," I muttered, the words slipping out bitterly. Then I told her, "Come home right now. We need to talk." "Why? What's going on?" she asked, sounding annoyed. "Just come home," I replied, my voice cold and trembling. When she walked through the door, I asked her straight up, "Were you actually in town looking for presents?" She kept up her story, insisting that she'd been looking for her niece's gift. I shook my head and said, "I know where you really were." Her face instantly shifted from confusion to shock. She sat down, then explained, "I was just over there for coffee and a chat." I asked her, "Then why lie to me?" She sighed, "I didn't want to make you feel more insecure or jealous. I thought if I told you I was with him, you'd just get upset." I couldn't believe it. How is lying supposed to help with insecurity? If anything, it makes it worse. She insisted that nothing had happened and that she'd only been considering my feelings, wanting to spend time with her friend without me worrying. Like an idiot, I ended up believing her, convincing myself that maybe I was just being overly jealous and clingy. I had no idea I was being gaslit. A week went by, and one day while I was at work, she texted me, "Is it okay if I go to his house for coffee after work?" She finished hours before I did. So I thought, fine, I'm not even going to be home yet anyway, so I told her to go ahead. Later that day, stuck in traffic on my way home, I get another text from her. "I'll be staying over for dinner." I felt something snap. Furious, I texted back, "You know what? Don't bother coming home tonight. Just stay there." I told her straight up that, at this point, it was clearly an emotional affair, at the very least. She looked at me, bewildered, and asked, "Why are you doing this?" I've put up with this for 2 months now, I replied. The whole situation is making me feel constantly sick to my stomach. Something's really wrong here, and my gut is screaming at me. She pleaded. Please, let me come home so we can talk. But I was firm. No, I said, refusing to let her back that night. I didn't speak to her again until the following evening. Like the fool I was, I texted her, admitting I made a huge mistake. I overreacted. You can come home. When she came back, her expression was tense. You've really damaged our relationship, she said, her voice cold. I don't even know if I can trust you now. I wanted so badly to tell her that she was the one who'd broken my trust by lying to me the week before, but I bit my tongue. I chalked it up to my own jealousy issues flaring up again. Instead, I apologized for my actions, and things gradually seemed to settle back into routine. Or so I thought. Around December 20th, she told me that she wanted to go to her sister's late on Christmas Eve and spend Christmas Day there with her niece and nephew. She insisted she still wanted to have a few special days with me first, suggesting we spend the 23rd and 24th together as our Christmas. I was disappointed she wouldn't be with me on Christmas Day, but I respected her decision. So, I went along with it, and those 2 days together were wonderful. We cooked Christmas dinner, made some snacks, watched Netflix, and snuggled up on the couch, enjoying our own little celebration. I enjoyed our time together so much. She was supposed to head to her sister's around 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, so I helped her pack a few things. Then, a realization hit me. She'd mentioned that her sister would be back around 6:30 after a shopping trip, but I also remembered that he finished work around 6 o'clock. My suspicions flared up again, but I pushed them down. She wouldn't go to his house on Christmas Eve, I told myself. She wouldn't be so callous as to leave me alone over Christmas. Ignoring my gut, I convinced myself it was just my jealousy talking, and accusing her now could destroy our relationship. So, I swallowed my doubts and surprised her with a few presents, things I knew she'd love. She looked at me, a bit teary-eyed, and admitted, I feel really guilty. I couldn't afford to get you anything this year. I smiled and reassured her, it's okay. I didn't buy them expecting anything in return. I just wanted you to have them because I love you. We kissed, said goodbye, and she left. That was the last time I'd see her. A few hours after she left, I remembered I had an email to reply to, so I opened Gmail. To my surprise, she'd left herself logged in on the computer. I hesitated but clicked anyway. There, in her email, was a downloaded WhatsApp chat between her and him. I opened it and began reading. What I found crushed me. For almost 2 months, this affair had been going on. Reading through her messages was like pouring salt on an open wound. What started as light, harmless flirting quickly escalated. She told him how much she loved cuddling on his sofa, watching movies with him, and even joked about sending him pictures to motivate him to hurry home. The messages showed she requested pictures from him, videos, and sent her own in return. By early December, they had slept together. And from the timestamps, I could see she was telling him how much she enjoyed it while sitting in the same room as me. Toward the end of the conversation thread, I found messages from around December 18th, with both of them talking about how they couldn't wait to be together. At one point, he even joked that she should steal my PC and VR headset before she goes, because he wanted to play it. She laughed in response, and I just sat there in shock, feeling utterly betrayed. In the middle of my breakdown, I decided to check her Google location history. My worst fears were confirmed. She was at his house that very moment, on Christmas Eve, while I sat alone thinking she was with her sister. Just when I thought I couldn't feel any lower, I scrolled down through her emails a bit more and saw she'd bought him a Christmas present, a t-shirt, despite telling me she couldn't afford to buy me anything. That was it. The realization hit me hard. Our relationship was over. There was no coming back from this. I called her, intending to confront her, but before diving in, I asked her a simple question. Where are you right now? I wanted to give her one last chance to come clean, to see if she would finally be honest. Instead, she turned it around on me, saying she couldn't handle the constant mistrust and insisted that she was at her sister's. Even in the final moments, she lied and tried to make me feel like I was the one at fault. I told her everything I knew about her messages with him, the lies, the nights spent convincing me I was being irrational, the gut-wrenching emotional breakdown I went through. All while she offered no support, no acknowledgement. She stayed mostly silent, only saying, I know a few times, which stung even more. After years of supporting her through some of her darkest times, this was how she repaid me, with deception and abandonment when I needed her the most. I ended the call, telling her I never wanted to see her again. Later, I discovered from their WhatsApp exchange that her sister knew the whole time. She was complicit in all of this, never once saying a word to me or encouraging her to be honest. I just can't believe how low they stooped. What a disgraceful family. Yesterday, I packed all her things into bags and left them in the garden for her to pick up. I didn't damage any of her stuff, though it took immense self-control not to. I know I'm better than that. Right now, I'm in a really dark place. I find myself crying randomly, triggered by the smallest things. I've been experiencing what I think are panic attacks. My heart races when I lie in bed, and I feel constantly nauseous. A couple of nights ago, I even woke up in a panic, confused and convinced she was still in the house looking for me. I feel completely devastated and broken. I hope to eventually move on from this, but I'm scared this betrayal will taint any future relationships and haunt me for the rest of my life. She's ruined me. It's been 4 days since D-Day, and I'm still struggling. The pain is so raw. I've been crying on and off the entire time. Last night was particularly rough. I just lay in bed and sobbed for a solid 10 minutes. I feel like I'm at rock bottom. She's texted me multiple times since Sunday, telling me she's been feeling confused for months and that her feelings for me were genuine, though none of what she did was logical. She says she doesn't expect me to take her back, but would like to mend our friendship. Finally, she texts me saying she doesn't want our marriage to end, as if it didn't already end the moment she cheated. She insists that I need to talk to her face-to-face to scream and shout if that's what it takes for me to find closure. This infuriates me. I can't believe she wants me to consider mending our friendship after everything she's done, and now she wants to meet and talk? Does she expect a heartfelt conversation where she can justify the months of emotional abuse I endured? She must be delusional. I haven't replied to her messages, and I have no intention of doing so. One thing I worry about is her showing up at the house, trying to apologize, or threatening to do something if I don't communicate with her. I really couldn't handle that. She's already put me through enough torture. So that's where I'm at. Things have been really rough lately. But at least I have a friend coming over tomorrow night, which will give me a good distraction for the New Year's weekend. Thanks again for all of your. It's been just over a month since D-Day, and I wanted to check in and share how I've been doing. The first 2 weeks of January were possibly the worst of my life. I hit absolute rock bottom. I cried multiple times every single day, stopped eating, and lost so much weight that people started asking if I was unwell. Those were incredibly dark days. Now, a month has passed, and things have improved somewhat. I still cry, but not as often, and my appetite is slowly returning. I don't feel as despondent anymore. I do still experience intense, upsetting feelings every couple of days, along with thoughts that I'll never find anyone else, but I'm not as consumed by them as I once was. As for maintaining no contact, I've managed it, though it's been unbelievably challenging. I blocked her number, but she found ways to reach me through a few of my old email addresses. She even sent me a long letter via email in early January, expressing her deep regret for what she did. She acknowledged that she knows I want her to suffer, and she promised that she would for the rest of her life. In her message, she claimed that I was the only one who ever made her feel truly attractive and pleaded with me to recognize that her feelings for me were always real. In short, it was all the typical excuses you'd expect from a cheater and a narcissist. I'm still resolute in my decision not to entertain any possibility of reconciliation. I have nothing to gain from it, and she's likely just seeking comfort in the wake of her actions. The novelty of the affair is probably starting to wear off for her, and I can only imagine that the guilt is beginning to consume her if it hasn't already. My recovery process has been somewhat inconsistent, but I'm trying to take things one day at a time. Work has helped keep me occupied throughout the week and gives me a sense of purpose. In the evenings, I've found joy in cooking. It's hard to feel sad when the kitchen smells so wonderful. I've also done a bit of light socializing, though money is tight right now, so I can't do as much as I'd like. Most importantly, I've been spending a lot of time with my dog, and I'm incredibly grateful for the comfort she has provided me over the past month. I think the key aspects of my recovery have been allowing myself to process all my grief, learning to accept my current situation, and beginning to enjoy my own company. It's undoubtedly been a challenging time, and I know it will continue to be for a while, but I feel like I have both hands on the ledge now instead of just one. Thanks for reading, and I genuinely hope you're all doing okay out there. Here I am, 5 weeks after D-Day. Emotionally, I'm still a bit scattered, but I'm working through it. Sometimes I can go hours, or even almost a whole day without thinking about her or what she did. Other times, something will trigger a powerful memory of our relationship. For instance, a few days ago, while tidying up around the house, I stumbled upon a keepsake she had given me years ago, titled "To the Man I Love." Moments like that can completely derail my day. Throughout this ordeal, I've coped mainly by keeping myself as busy and distracted as possible. I've been cooking from scratch, binge-watching TV shows, taking long walks with my dog, writing, and playing video games. The hardest moments usually come at night when I'm lying in bed alone with my thoughts. My mind often drifts back to that Christmas Eve when I discovered her infidelity. I can get trapped in a mental loop, replaying the events over and over. If I let my thoughts wander too much, I inevitably end up imagining her with the other guy, which makes me feel physically sick and has even brought me close to panic attacks. However, these intrusive thoughts are becoming less frequent as time passes. Maintaining no contact is absolutely crucial for me right now. Despite how tough it's been to avoid communicating with her for over a month, the clarity I've gained has made it worthwhile. It has helped clear the fog, allowing me to see the situation for what it is. I'm emerging from this experience with my self-respect, dignity, values, and strength of character intact. I always told my ex-wife that infidelity was a deal-breaker in a relationship, and I meant it. If someone betrays me in such a way, I will remove them from my life without hesitation. Maybe she thought she could manipulate my love for her to reconcile, hoping for a second chance or at least to maintain a friendship. However, the fallout from her affair has unfolded exactly as I always predicted it would. She made a conscious choice to betray me, and I remained firm in my decision to end the relationship immediately. My actions have earned me a great deal of respect from friends and colleagues alike. They commend my strength and unwavering commitment to my values, and as a result, I can look in the mirror and genuinely admire the man staring back at me. Many people struggle with self-esteem and confidence in situations like this, and while both have been affected for me to some degree, I still see a lot of value in myself. I remind myself daily that I am the prize and that she will search for me in every man she meets in the future. However, she will never find anyone like me because I'm not replaceable. Through her selfishness, she has lost a good man. I was always loyal to her because I loved and respected her immensely. Unfortunately, until she confronts her deep-rooted issues, she is destined to repeat this behavior time and again, always believing that someone else is responsible for her happiness. In the end, her actions may have knocked me down, but I will rise again, stronger than before. I've learned the importance of loving and taking care of myself because, ultimately, I am the most valuable person I know. I've recently started attending MMA classes, and I can't believe the transformation I've experienced. I've never felt better, physically and mentally. Training has not only helped me get fitter, but also provided an outlet for all the emotions I've been processing. I've become stronger and more disciplined, and it feels incredible. To top it all off, I've started dating someone new. She's an amateur fighter, and her passion for the sport is contagious. We motivate each other to push our limits in the gym and support one another outside of it. It's refreshing to be with someone who shares my interests and understands the dedication it takes to pursue our goals. I feel like I'm finally on a path toward healing and happiness, and I'm excited about what the future holds. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Last year on Father's Day began like any other. I'd be up early, waiting for my wife and teenage daughters to join me. On Mother's Day, I'd treat my wife to mimosas for breakfast, a fancy cheese plate for lunch, and her favorite steak dinner. As the girls grew older, I handled the pampering solo. On Father's Day, my wife usually cooked me a special breakfast, though last year was different. I waited until she woke to eat, starving by then. When she finally did, she greeted me with a kiss and got to work on a family breakfast. We later enjoyed lunch at a quirky cafe with Doctor Who-themed sandwiches. My wife, a calendar devotee, orchestrates our life with precision, managing holidays and kids' activities with ease. All events, from holidays to birthdays, are marked on our calendar, rarely overlooked except by me. When my wife noticed my birthday coincided with Father's Day, I wasn't surprised. She joked about double gifts, promising something special. I kissed her cheek, hoping for more than the usual. She usually teased with head employments during foreplay, but on my birthday and Father's Day, they were special treats, given without expectation of return. I wasn't clueless. I was excited, thinking I might get a rare treat on my upcoming birthday. But as the weeks passed, things felt off. My wife, usually steady, started acting strange, working late, dressing up more for her job at the bakery, even wearing makeup. Doubts crept in when she went out alone on a Friday, which was unusual for us. We were a tight-knit couple, preferring each other's company. Our marriage felt solid. We weren't big on going out. Our ideal night was lounging at home, so seeing her dolled up that Friday was unexpected. She wore a new skirt, tan stockings, and heels, looking like she'd been to the salon. I whistled, thinking we had plans, but she explained she was going out with coworkers. Shocked, I asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier. She seemed uneasy, but apologized, claiming she'd just been asked. I eyed her outfit, questioning how she managed all that in an hour at work. I grew increasingly frustrated, sensing her dishonesty, yet unable to confront her. Her infidelity seemed unfathomable. She embodied the typical suburban wife and mother. Our bed life remained vibrant, adding to my confusion. When she brushed off my suspicions, claiming she worked half a day and wanted to look nice, I was left speechless as she hurried out the door. She returned near midnight, her hair hastily tied up, dispelling any notion of a salon visit. Ignoring me, she headed straight for the shower, leaving me bewildered. Something was amiss in our seemingly perfect life, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending trouble, especially considering my line of work in retail. On Saturday morning, as I prepared for work, my wife didn't wake to bid me farewell as she usually did. I found it surprising. At the store, I encountered Missy, the morning barista, waiting at the entrance. With her striking blue eyes and red hair, she caught my attention, despite my contented marriage. Redheads had always intrigued me. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance, still locked, as it was half an hour before opening. Missy had mentioned feeling uncomfortable with the night crew. "Good morning, Missy," I greeted, unlocking the doors. "What's up, Bill? You look down," she observed. "Just a lot on my mind today," I admitted. She gave me a curious look, but didn't pry. "Give me a sec. I'll get you some of our best coffee," she offered. Forced to smile, I replied, "Sounds good. I'll join you soon." I secured the doors while she hastened to ready the cafe for the busy morning ahead. Knowing how bustling our little cafe became once the store opened, I made my rounds on the floor, checking in on the department crews. While my competent department managers made these checks unnecessary, I valued the chance to greet and chat with my team. Maintaining positive relationships with them mattered to me, and I believe they appreciated the effort. My final stop was at the coffee shop, where Missy had my usual large black coffee ready and waiting. "Here's your cup of Megamart's finest brew," Missy said, handing it over. "Thanks, Missy," I replied, pushing $2 across the counter. "No need for payment today, boss," she insisted. "Can't take any chances, Missy. I cover all my expenses here. Last thing I need is someone causing trouble with corporate," I explained. She gasped. "Bill, I'd never do that." "Not saying you would, Missy, but I can't risk it, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised what I have to deal with. Denying someone a day off or cutting overtime, it's just not worth it," I explained. "All right, boss, understood." She nodded. I waved farewell and took a sip from my mug, aware that some employees likely receive free coffee occasionally, though it was impossible to track. And it wasn't worth the hassle of monitoring video footage just to ensure everyone paid. As the company's leader, I faced risks, dealing with employee frustrations over trivial matters like parking regulations, prompting unnecessary HR calls. The day passed quietly, with the highlight being an old lady stealing cat and bird food. It provided the distraction I needed, keeping me occupied without dwelling on my marital issues. Upon returning home, I found my wife and daughters heading out to a concert with other families. While it had been planned and noted on the calendar, I had forgotten. I hoped to speak with Katie later, eager to resolve our recent tensions. Not knowing what had transpired the previous night nagged at me, leaving me with little else to dwell on. Tonight, I seized the chance to snoop around. I checked her email, expecting it to be fruitless, but surprisingly, no one else had sent messages. Since she had a cell phone, I couldn't check her texts or call log. Checking her clothes for clues was also futile, as she'd already done her Saturday laundry. Frustrated, I achieved nothing and went to bed after the movie feeling just as unsettled. On my birthday and Father's Day, I began my day as usual, toast, coffee, and enjoying the morning on the terrace. It was beautiful, with birds chirping, and I pondered what the day held in store. Around 9, I returned inside to refill my coffee and found my wife and daughters up and packing lunch. Surprised by their early activity, I questioned their plans. Jill announced a beach trip, catching me off guard. As they departed, I realized they remembered my birthday, unlike how I often had to remind them of important dates. Perplexed by Katie's oversight, I received a call from my mom, hoping it was them coming back, but it wasn't. "Hey, Billy, a happy birthday and Father's Day," Mom greeted. "Thanks, Mom. Kathy's got some big plans for you guys today," I replied. "Nope, she took the girls to the beach just a bit ago," she informed me. "Really? That's not like her." I'd have thought she'd whip up a tasty breakfast and make today special for you, I commented. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure what's up lately. She's been acting strange for weeks now, Mom shared. Well, don't sweat it. She probably has something special lined up for later. I've got to head to church. Love you, Billy, Mom assured me. Love you, Mom. Mom's eternal optimism and her close relationship with Kathy always warmed my heart, especially since Dad passed away a few years ago. I stood there, pondering the state of my marriage, when the phone rang once more. It was my assistant, Anne. Bill, there was an incident at the coffee shop this morning. What happened? Was Missy involved? Unfortunately, yes. She was on the stairs when a customer shoved her. She lost her balance and took a fall. Oh my goodness. Is she all right? They've taken her to St. Alex's Hospital for x-rays. It looks like she might have a broken arm or something. Poor girl. Do you need me to cover her shift? No, everything's sorted. I just wanted to give you a heads up for tomorrow. I apologize for reaching out on Father's Day. Don't worry about it, Anne. Thanks for letting me know. I hope Missy was all right, but assuming they wouldn't return, I went to IHOP for breakfast. The bustling atmosphere, filled with happy families celebrating fathers, overwhelmed me, and I left to avoid breaking down. Opting for McDonald's, I enjoyed a satisfying breakfast with coffee and orange juice. Sitting in the park, I reminisced about boating trips with my daughters when they were young, realizing they had grown distant as they neared college. Their outings with their mother became more frequent, perhaps for the best. I acknowledged there would likely be no dinner together as the day wore on, so I grabbed a Reuben at the doctor-themed cafe. A Facebook post garnered the usual Father's Day wishes, but my mother-in-law's comment about the beach trip surprised me, as my wife had been posting beach photos. Feeling down, I sought solace in a sports bar, but soon retreated to a cigar lounge, indulging in a pricey Opus X. Settling in to watch the game, I was invited to join a group playing cards. I'm Bill, I introduced myself to the older gentleman. I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry. Pleasure to meet you both. They finished their handshake and included me in their little 5-card game. Grab yourself a drink, Bill, Lance offered, placing the cooler on the floor. I expressed gratitude and opted for a Miller Lite. No kids, or did the ex take them with a new guy? Jerry quipped with a smirk. I frowned and replied, My wife and the girls are at the beach. Seems like they've lost track of the day. Tough break, Lance chimed in. I hardly see my boys. They're both in the service. Jerry nodded, adding, My daughter's out in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm heading there next week. That sounds wonderful, I said. As my daughters hit 17 and 18, I began longing for the days of them being little. They nodded in agreement. Eventually, the conversation circled back to my wife. Do you think she genuinely forgot, or is she avoiding you? Jerry asked, echoing my own thoughts. Recounting the recent weeks and Friday's issues, they shook their heads in disbelief. She's cheating on you, Lance asserted, with Jerry nodding in agreement. I can't believe it, I muttered. Grappling with the revelation, though deep down I knew it made sense. Listen, Bill, Lance began, recounting his own experience. I've been down this road. The sudden changes in behavior. The late nights out dressed provocatively. The lack of respect. Been there, buddy. Lance shared how he regretted his initial reaction of divorcing his unfaithful wife, highlighting the financial and emotional toll it took. Bill, trust me, he continued, urging me to consider forgiveness if I truly loved her. It'll be better for you in the long run. Guys in their 40s don't often get second chances at love. Thank you, Lance. You've given me a lot to think about. I might have said it aloud, but deep down, I thought he was crazy. Forgiving her for cheating and staying married seemed impossible. I shook both men's hands, bid them farewell, and left. As I scrolled through Facebook on the couch, dinner time approached. Seeing my daughters and wife's posts filled with pictures of their joyful day saddened me further. Enough of this, I thought. It was time to face reality. My wife had forgotten my birthday and Father's Day. What did it matter? What counted was my certainty that she had cheated, especially after Friday night's strange behavior. Her goal seemed to be rubbing it in my face, and now she had succeeded. Determined to move forward, I prepared for the evening. I decided to treat myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant, even if it meant a long wait. After a shower and donning my sport coat and slacks, I headed out for steak. Sitting at the bar, awaiting a table, an older man took the seat beside me. Observing my solitary champagne bottle, He frowned but refrained from comment, opting for a martini. As the bartender filled my glass, he couldn't resist asking if I was celebrating alone or taking someone else's place. I assured him it was just me. He nodded and took a sip, revealing he was awaiting his family, 3 generations strong despite his daughter breaking her arm earlier. He chuckled, noting the unexpected nature of grown children breaking bones. I nodded in agreement. Looks like I'll be cooking solo for a while. My wife needs to focus on taking care of Missy and Mia and leave me be. Suddenly, a little girl called out, "Grandpa!" and dashed across the crowded bar, showering the man with affectionate hugs and kisses. Then I heard my name. Missy and her mother approached me. The resemblance between them was striking. "Hey, Missy, how's your arm?" I inquired. "Not bad. The painkillers are doing their job. But it was rough when they said it," she replied. Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and their adorable daughter, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" Mary asked. "I'm not sure. She took the girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them all day." "On Father's Day? And it's your birthday too?" Mary exclaimed. "That's terrible. What's going on with her?" Not wanting to delve into it, I shrugged. "Forget about her, you're joining us," Mary insisted. I grasped Jack's reference to his red rage. "You don't want them to gang up on you, Bill," he chuckled, a testament to his experience dealing with familial conflicts. "But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to intrude," I replied. "Nonsense," he retorted. "This is our day, Bill. Grandpa, remember?" As their table's buzzer sounded, he tossed a $20 bill and left, insisting I meet him at our table. "Sorry about that, Bill. My parents can be stubborn," Missy apologized. "Don't worry, Missy. Eating alone would be worse," I assured her. Dinner conversation remained light, filled with anecdotes about our daughters. Mia giggled at stories of her mom's childhood antics. Later, my phone rang, but I ignored it, placing it on the table. "Your wife?" Mary inquired. "Yes, it's complicated," I admitted. "Maybe you can find a way to forgive her," Mary suggested, glancing at Jack. I signaled for the check, expressing gratitude for the meal and treating them. As I signed the check, I pondered the advice I'd received, despite lacking solid evidence of her infidelity. Ignoring the persistent ringing of my phone, I couldn't help but wonder what was wrong with people. As I pulled into the garage, my daughters greeted me with kisses and hugs, apologizing for forgetting Father's Day. "Girls, it's okay. I don't expect you to remember my birthday," I reassured them. Suddenly, Jill exclaimed, "Wait, it's your birthday today." She rushed inside, yelling at my wife. "Daddy, we didn't know. We're so sorry. You must hate us," Jill lamented. "No, sweetheart, I love you more than anything. We decided last night to go to the beach today, and we didn't realize it was your birthday." "It's okay, don't worry, I'm not upset with you," I comforted her. Though I didn't express my anger toward her mother, it was my issue, not my daughter's. Ignoring the chaos in the kitchen, I changed upstairs and returned to find my wife sobbing alone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I shook my head and retreated to the deck with a beer and cigar. Enjoying the serene evening, my wife interrupted me. "Bill, What's his name?" I interjected, my anger rising. She didn't respond, and I realized I was headed for divorce. What a mistake marrying her had been after nearly 20 years. At this point, I began fearing the worst. How long had she been unfaithful? Was he her first? Did I even know him? Were these girls truly mine? It's astonishing the negative thoughts that invade your mind when you're mistreated. I decided to request a paternity test for the girls as part of the divorce, not only for my peace of mind, but also to embarrass Katie. I spent the night researching divorce laws online before falling asleep on the couch, how I spent my birthday. Waking at 5 in the morning, I found Katie peacefully asleep in my bedroom, her undressed body curled around her pillow. Despite my restless night, she looked serene. Sadly, she was no longer mine, but I couldn't help admiring her beauty. After a quick shower, I left without waking her, only to be met by Jill in the hallway. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked. "As bad as it can get," I sighed. "Can you forgive her? It's just one day's mistake," she pleaded. "Honey, it's more than forgetting my birthday or Father's Day." "She cheated on me," I explained. "No, Dad, she wouldn't do that. Something must have pushed her, but I won't accept it. Think about it. She's been acting strange for weeks. Friday night, after getting all done up, she went out dressed provocatively." "That wasn't for you," Jill reasoned. "She avoided me all weekend. Clearly, she felt guilty or resentful toward me and didn't want to be around me at all." "When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? It's always a family outing. What if it's not an affair? What if it was just a one-time thing? Can't you forgive her for once? Jill pleaded. I doubt that's the case, honey. But look at her actions this weekend. Has she shown love toward me? I questioned. Daddy, you didn't see her face when Grandma called to ask why she didn't wish Grandpa a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and yelled no so loudly we thought Grandpa was having a heart attack, Jill recounted. He's fine, Dad. Mom sobbed on her knees until we helped her up and sat her on the couch. She kept repeating that she loves you. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. We calmed her down and convinced her to call you, Jill continued. I don't know what to say, Jill. She doesn't love me. You can't cheat on your spouse and claim to love them. That's not love, it's selfishness. Love should be selfless. When she was with another man, she abandoned me, I concluded. She hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I can't imagine it was just some random guy she met at a bar. There must have been flirting, or her accepting his advances. Pleasure touches, maybe even kissing and caressing, all leading up to her being with him. It's a betrayal to your spouse. To show carnal affection to someone else when you're in love, please don't divorce her. I have to head to work now. We'll talk more later, she said, walking into Jenny's room. I promised to discuss our conversation with Jenny. No more secrets in our family. I wondered how long we'd remain a family. Despite Kathy's likely busy schedule, I felt calm throughout the day. The only unusual thing was dealing with the paperwork related to Missy's accident. I ensured she'd be compensated for her vacation and helped her fill out the accident report, knowing she wasn't good with her left hand. She signed it, and I felt a pang of concern for her well-being. How's home? She asked. Not good, I replied. She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. Damn, Bill, she said sympathetically. I'm sorry, I murmured. You probably don't want to hear my story, but I get it. My ex cheated on me when I was pregnant. I kicked him out before our daughter was born. My mom wasn't pleased. She basically called me disposable. Wow. I found it strange when your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night. She was looking right at your dad, she revealed. Yeah, I noticed. I'm not sure who, but it makes me think one of them was cheating. I'm sorry, she offered. No need. If they're happy deceiving each other, let them. I'd rather not trust a liar, I stated firmly. Kathy wasn't home when I returned from work. She was probably with her lover, and I was furious. I drove to her grocery store, spotted her car, and was surprised to find her with a young man. She noticed me and seemed to yell no as I approached, but I left before she could say anything. If she was cheating, he could have her. I drove home, packed my bags, and decided to stay in a hotel until I found an apartment. Jenny and Jill begged me to stay, but I explained that I caught their mom almost cheating with a man in her car after work. Dad, there must be a mistake, Jenny pleaded. I saw what I saw. There's no innocent explanation for her being in the back parking lot with a man in her car, I insisted. Please don't break up our family, Jenny sobbed. Your mom did that, not me. I love you girls. I'll keep in touch every day, I reassured them before leaving them in tears and heading to the garage. As I drove out of the garage, Katie nearly hit me as she sped away. The following week was utter torment. I ignored all of my wife's calls, and she bombarded me with messages every hour, likely taking a week off work to do so. Despite pleas from my family and Kathy's sister, none would confirm her infidelity when I asked. Frustrated, I stopped taking their calls, insisting that my daughters avoid mentioning their mother. Eventually, I met with a lawyer and proposed splitting the house equally, even though I could have claimed a larger share due to my larger contributions. Surprisingly, I learned I didn't have to pay alimony since Kathy could support herself. The downside was lacking concrete proof of her affair, which could weaken my case in court. Nonetheless, I was willing to take my chances. My lawyer geared up for divorce proceedings and life carried on. There'd be no forced mediation or lengthy legal battles. The split was fair, obvious to any judge, but nothing was smooth sailing. When served the papers, she rallied her family against me again. Supposedly, she only cheated once on that Friday before my birthday. Yet her relatives made me out to be the villain for not hearing her out. It was surreal. Even my daughters resisted until I fibbed about a court order for a DNA test. Kathy's letter arrived, admitting to a fling with a 21-year-old, which spared me the need to prove infidelity for the divorce. Finally, karma favored me. She resisted the divorce at first, but the judge approved it when he saw the terms I proposed and her admission of infidelity in the letter. I was to be divorced in 60 days, finding myself isolated for refusing to talk to her. I was labeled immature and a prick. Even my mother and daughters stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I stood by my principles. I called my daughters every day, leaving messages despite their silence. I refused to let them blame me for the lack of communication, making every effort to stay in touch. One change was having coffee with Missy on Sundays. We met at a local coffee shop, where she and Mia lived nearby. I confided in her about my struggles while Mia watched cartoons. "Your daughters will come around, Bill," she reassured. "Living with your wife. Who knows what she's put in their heads?" I hope so. I just miss them terribly. The following week, I returned to the same store at the usual time and was engrossed in reading when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hey, stranger." I smiled and welcomed them to join me again. "Are you stalking me, or is this your usual routine?" she joked. "No, I live nearby and I enjoy having coffee and reading on Sunday mornings. It gets a bit lonely at home," I explained. We chatted about the neighborhood until we parted ways. Meeting every Sunday wasn't planned, but it became a habit. I found her company enjoyable, and little Mia was a delight. On the day the divorce was finalized, I knocked on the front door of my former house. My wife answered, tears evident. Without a word, she invited me in. "Are the girls home?" I inquired. "They're at a school musical. I knew you'd come tonight," she admitted. "So you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you?" I smirked. "Yes," she admitted. "I knew you'd try to beg and plead, but I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there's no forgiveness for that." "It was one mistake, Bill. Why couldn't you forgive me?" she pleaded. "Did you love me when you were with that guy? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday?" I countered. "If that's your version of love, then it's beyond repair." "I never wanted this to happen," she sobbed. "And I never wanted a cheating wife," I retorted. "But here we are." She tried to speak, but I interrupted. "Katie, you not only broke my heart, but you turned my own mother and daughters against me. I'll never forgive you for that." "You acted irrationally," she countered. "If you don't make things right with my family, I'll expose your infidelity to every man you date. I don't need anyone else." Wrong answer. "Then I'll find other ways to hurt and embarrass you," she threatened. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my arm. "It's not my fault," she pleaded. "Oh, really? Did I cheat on you?" I shot back. "You've normalized cheating to our daughters. They'll think it's okay because you've convinced them it was a one-time mistake." "Well, I won't go down because of some idiot who made you feel hot." I freed my hand from hers. "Rot in hell for ending our marriage over a fling," I spat, leaving her in tears, unaffected by her distress. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. "Got a second, Bill?" "Sure, come on in," I replied, though I frowned, anticipating bad news. "Bill, does the company have rules about dating coworkers?" I disliked this question, hoping to ask her out myself, but it seemed I was too late. "No, we have strict intimidation policies. It protects against potential issues arising from workplace relationships," I explained. "Good, that's what I hoped for," she said, leaving her contact details on my desk. "My address and phone number. Let's have dinner tomorrow night. Mia will join us." I smiled and agreed, feeling grateful for the chance at happiness. "Hey, it's Dad. Hope you and your sister are doing well. Nothing new here except a coworker asked me out. Anyway, love you and miss you. Call soon. Bye." I knew this message might stir up trouble, but I didn't mind. I needed to move forward, and I was glad Missy had taken the lead. She was not only beautiful, but also had a wonderful character. Her daughter was delightful, and I had already met her parents. I felt like things were finally looking up. Just 15 minutes later, Katie texted me, calling me a fool for already dating. I chuckled at her delusion. I had no intention of mourning the end of my marriage to a cheating wife. At 41, I felt young enough to find love again, even consider having more kids. Missy, in her 30s, might share that desire. It was early to think about such things, but as a single mom, it might be a priority for her. As for me, I hadn't been carnal in months. The next evening after work, I showered, shaved, and dressed casually. Glancing in the mirror, I was satisfied with what I saw. I was in good shape, no extra weight, and my brown hair showed no signs of gray. With a well-paying job and savings, I considered myself a catch, especially for someone like Missy. Yet I realized I had no clue how to navigate the dating scene. Marriage provided comfort and familiarity, from holding hands to intimacy. Dating was uncharted territory. Oh my God. I had to relearn everything about lovemaking. With my ex-wife, I knew exactly what pleased her. Now I just hope the next woman enjoys the same things, or at least has a good rapport with her body. I worried I rushed back into dating too soon. Arriving at her house with wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal for Mia, I aimed to win her favor. When Missy opened the door, I was taken aback. Her curly red hair cascaded around her shoulders, complemented by just the right amount of makeup. She wore a breezy sundress, showcasing her beautiful legs. Barefoot, her hot pink toenails matched her fingernails. "Do I pass the test?" she teased. "God, yes," I blurted before I could retract my words. She chuckled, accepting the gifts and ushering me in. With Mia engrossed in TV, I knelt beside her, offering the stuffed bear. Her apprehension turned to delight as she eagerly took it, scampering off to show Missy. Watching Mia, I reminisced about Jenny and Jill at her age, realizing how much I missed them. "What's wrong?" Missy inquired, snapping me from my reverie. Forced smile. "Nothing. Just thinking about my daughters when they were Mia's age." "Is it really that bad?" she inquired. "They still won't talk to me. Kathy's turned them against me, and I can't change their minds, but I'm still trying. I leave them messages every day, and I won't stop." "I'm so sorry, Bill. I know this is awful for you every day, but I know they listen to my messages. I mentioned our date tonight, and Katie texted me, calling me a prick for getting to the point so quickly. Sorry, is that too fast?" She bit her lip, looking cute. "Maybe," I replied honestly, "but I'd be happy to find out with you." She smiled, taking my hand. "Dinner is ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "Sounds great. Oh, I have garlic bread too. So be ready for us to make out on the couch later." Mia giggled, and I was surprised by Missy's candidness. She sensed my awkwardness and said, "Bill, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are, and it doesn't take much to realize that I really like you. You're going to be a hot commodity soon, and I want to stake my claim early." "Hot stuff?" I quipped. "Yep. You have no idea how much buzz the news of your divorce has caused at the store, honey. Your appearance on the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of many unmarried ladies. You're a handsome man in good shape. You're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity." When I sat down at her table, I felt quite good, so I'm getting in line early, she concluded. I grasped her hand. "I like you too." Mia chimed in. "Sketty's my favorite. I like Sketty too." "The fattier, the better," I quipped, eyeing the Parmesan cheese jar. "And you must have really pungent cheese," I added jokingly. She giggled, correcting me. "It's not stinky cheese, it's Parm. Stinky cheese," I teased, pretending to sniff the jar dramatically. "Wow, this is really stinky cheese," Missy chuckled, shaking her head as Mia poured a generous amount over the spaghetti. During dinner, we chatted lightly. I inquired about Mia's preschool adventures, and she eagerly shared every detail. It was a delightful exchange. I soon noticed Missy's quiet contentment as she observed us. As she began clearing plates, she joked, "She hasn't shared her favorite TV shows yet." After tucking Mia into bed, Missy joined me on the couch. Handing her a glass of wine, she relaxed and remarked, "Being a mom is the highlight of my day. But moments like these are precious." I instinctively embraced her, and she nestled closer. "It's even busier with 2, I admitted. "Do you think your girls will come around?" she asked. "I hope so," I answered, reflecting on their situation. She kissed my cheek and encouraged me not to give up the fight for them. Setting down her glass, Missy leaned back. "Bill, I've made it clear that I really like you. I'm too old to play games. I want to continue seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my life carnally." I started to interject, but she raised a finger. "I know you want to be a gentleman, but you don't have to be. I'm not looking for casual flings. I want an exclusive relationship. My daughter needs a father figure, and I need a husband. That's what I'm offering." I attempted to speak again, only to be met with resistance once more. "Typically, guys bolt after this conversation. I don't see you as that type, but I'm offering you an out. If you're looking to play the field, I'm not your match. But if you're interested in building something lasting, then I'm here." "Impressive," I remarked. "Was that rehearsed or spontaneous?" She frowned, misunderstanding my reaction. "Missy, we've had a professional relationship for 3 years. Our recent coffee meetups have been enjoyable. I'm a family man. I've always been. I don't know how to navigate the single scene, and the idea of dating terrifies me. If my wife hadn't strayed, I'd still be happily married. No, I'm not interested in that lifestyle." She smiled, taking my hand. "You're charming, intelligent, and your spaghetti is fantastic." We shared a laugh, and she playfully nudged my shoulder. "I'd like you to be my boyfriend. Let's build something meaningful together, including with your daughter." That night, we refrained from intimacy. Despite the temptation, I opted to take things slow, respecting both our feelings. A stroke of luck came my way when I received an application for a managerial position. Though I never learned the name of the individual who contributed to the demise of my marriage, fate intervened when he applied for the night manager role. Recognizing him instantly, I orchestrated his hiring, anticipating the opportunity for payback. On his second night, I left a 40-inch TV in his car, identical to mine, knowing it would likely be out of stock by morning. I arrived as his shift ended, walking him to his car while discussing his team. Upon noticing the TV in his back seat, I feigned surprise. "Jeff, did you buy that TV today? We're not open yet." "No, Bill, it's not mine. I have no idea how it got there." "Let's head back to the store," I suggested, to which he reluctantly agreed. Back at the store, his fear was palpable. With no night security due to our night crew, I easily disabled the security system, covering the camera with tape. When he saw the system malfunctioning, he grew frantic, insisting on his innocence as I contacted the police. Despite hoping for harsher consequences, he received a misdemeanor in community service. The corporation, finally acknowledging security gaps, installed parking lot cameras. He never suspected my involvement and unsuccessfully attempted to blame his team. His termination was swift and unsurprising. One chilly Saturday morning, a week after my dinner with Missy, I found her waiting in the car to keep warm. As I parked next to her, she greeted me with a kiss and confirmed our dinner plans for the night. "Absolutely," I replied. "Okay, I have something special I'm cooking for us. You won't want to miss it," she added. Before I could respond, Katie's interruption came from behind me. Missy, visibly irritated, addressed her. "Katie, what do you want?" I asked, growing annoyed. "I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number?" "Yeah, after your 30 messages about how I'm an prick for continuing to live. I'm done. What do you want?" "We need to talk about the girls in college," Katie insisted. "They can go wherever they want. I've handled the finances for them. I'd like to be involved, but thanks to you poisoning them against me, they won't talk to me," I replied. Katie suggested the girls feared I wouldn't pay their tuition. Missy interjected with a laugh. "I lost them in the divorce." This retort earned her a glare from Katie, who then blamed me for not forgiving her one slip-up. "You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. You better never date again. If I find out, you'll never see a second date," I warned. Missy's rebuttal was sharp. No one wants to date a cheating strumpet unless they're looking for easy lovemaking. I headed towards the store, but heard shouting behind me. Glancing back, I saw Missy confronting Katie, pinning her against the car. "Stay away from my man!" Missy yelled, jabbing her finger. I intervened, pulling Missy away. "Stop it, Missy! She's not worth it!" "You heard me," Katie retorted, storming off. "Please, Katie, just go. It's over between us, and it's your fault," I said, leaving her sobbing by the car. Catching up to Missy, I took her hand. "I'm sorry, Bill. I got too territorial," she admitted. "No worries. Parking lot fights are great for the ego," I joked, and we went inside, laughing. Later, my mom called, but the call cut off abruptly. Concerned, I rushed to her house, ignoring Missy's calls. Arriving, I found the ambulance gone. She'd passed away before reaching the hospital. Alone in the ER lobby, I pondered her last words. Then Missy called. "Hey, my mom just passed away." "Oh, Bill, I'm deeply sorry to hear that. Yes, thank you. I'm worried I won't be much company tonight." "No worries, I'll be there for you." "You need me. Please let me come over." "All right, yes." Expressing my reluctance to be alone, I was grateful she agreed to keep me company. "I'm heading home now. I'll meet you there after you finish up." "All right, I'll be there soon." After finishing my conversation, I drove to my old house instead of heading home. I felt compelled to speak to my daughters, regardless of their willingness to see me. Arriving, I noticed both of their cars parked in the driveway, feeling a wave of apprehension. Entering through the garage, I was relieved not to find Kathy's car, as I wasn't ready to face her. The downstairs rooms were empty, so I made my way upstairs to the bedrooms. "Daddy!" Jill exclaimed as I entered her room. "What's up?" shouted Jenny, following behind me. "Did you come here to beg? Well, you can leave," Jill retorted. "Grandma had a heart attack and passed away this morning," I interjected. They both gasped. I felt it was important to share this news in person. "Now I feel like I've damned myself," I added. I exited and shut the door, ignoring Jenny's call to wait, and drove off. I headed to the small lake where we once shared joyous moments. Despite the chilly weather, the tranquil waters brought solace. Seated at a picnic bench, tears welled up again, not just for my mother, but for the estrangement from my daughters. Jenny's anger conveyed all I needed to know. Doubts crept in about my past actions, not with Katie, but with my girls. What had I done to earn their resentment? Katie's betrayal had shattered our family, yet my daughters couldn't see it. Lost in thought, I heard footsteps nearing. Turning, I found Katie and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I turned back to the lake. You forgot to turn off our Find My Phone app, Kathy replied. Bill, I'm sorry about your mom, she added. Yeah, I muttered. Do you regret her pass away or turning her against me? She fell silent. Leave me alone. I can't deal with your stuff right now, I said. I'll never forgive you. The last time we spoke, she insisted she wouldn't talk to me until I backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me before hanging up. I'm so sorry, Bill, she said before leaving. Then Jenny spoke up. Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being rude. They both rushed over to hug me and we cried together. It's not my fault, girls. Your mother's actions broke us apart, I said. We're sorry, Dad, Jill said. We just wanted you to forgive her. She loves you. It's obvious. Not enough to stay faithful, I replied. Jill, I'm sorry, girls, I said tearfully. We hugged again while Kathy watched from the car. Girls, I need you. You'll leave for college soon and I'll miss you. We're wasting time, I said. We understand, Daddy, Jenny said. We won't shut you out anymore. I wish Grandma had the chance to do the same, Jill added. Can we come with you, Daddy? We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could grab pizza. Sure, let your mom know, and let's head out. As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Missy's car. I had forgotten she was coming. Looks like you'll meet Missy, I told the girls. Is she your girlfriend? They asked simultaneously, making me chuckle. Yeah, well, we just started dating. Look at him blushing. So cute, Jenny. They dashed out of the car and bombarded Missy with questions, leaving her bewildered. Girls, give her a break. Help her inside, and I'll introduce you properly. They kissed my cheek and hurried to the garage while I approached Missy. Sorry about that, I said. She opened the door with a radiant smile and kissed my cheek. Your daughters? She asked. I nodded. Come on, let's make proper introductions. I hope I look okay. I must look awful. You're fine. They'll like you, Jenny. Jill, meet Missy, I said. They embraced Jenny and cheekily declared, You're super hot, Jill exclaimed. Good for you, Daddy. Missy laughed, leaving me too stunned to respond. Let's do a quick tour of the house. Then I need to handle some things for Grandma's services. Bill, I'll order pizza while you show them around. Perfect. You read my mind. Ooh, the girls cooed. As Missy smiled, I made the decision to wait until the next morning to inform others about my mom's passing. I'll draft an obituary for Monday's paper and share service details on Facebook. Tomorrow evening, after visiting the funeral home, we spent hours sharing stories about my mom and my girls, with a few embarrassing tales about myself thrown in to keep Missy entertained. It wasn't my fault I slipped on the wet pier and fell into the lake. Before we knew it, it was already 10. Girls, time is slipping away and it's getting late, I remarked. They frowned and asked if they could stay the night. I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet, I explained. Tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast. Okay, and if you don't mind, we could help sort through Grandma's things too, Jill offered. Thank you, I replied. Missy, would you like to join us for a ride or do you need to go home to Mia? She's staying with my parents. Jill's curiosity piqued. Who's Mia? Mia is my 4-year-old daughter, I revealed. Excited, they both squealed, expressing their eagerness to meet her. Missy chuckled at their enthusiasm. Someday soon, I promise. As we returned to my house, Missy commented, They're great girls. I'm glad you were able to reconnect with them. I sighed. Me too. I just wish it didn't take my mom's passing to bring us back together. With Missy nestled in my arms, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I awoke to find Missy still snuggled against me under a blanket. Feeling a sense of longing for closeness, I kissed her head and apologized for falling asleep. She moaned, stretching. It's okay, baby. You've had a very emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast? Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning. Of course, my daughters will love her. Needing to fetch Mia, I arranged to meet my daughters at IHOP. As I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed over. They embraced Mia, twirled her in the air, and showered her with kisses, making her squeal and giggle with joy. We need to go to the bathroom, the girls announced in unison. We'll take her, they said, whisking Mia away. I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along? I asked, smirking. She playfully clapped me on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. I hope they remain friends for years to come. Although it was just our first date, she expressed a long-term commitment, which was a bit surprising but reassuring. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted incessantly about everything. Mia showed genuine interest in their lives, peppering them with questions. My daughters, accustomed to babysitting, engaged effortlessly with Mia, bonding over shared interests in kids' shows and movies. Surprisingly, they also got along well with Missy, showing no hostility or anger toward her, unlike their initial reaction to my dating. This puzzled me, and I planned to discuss it with them later. After a busy day of phone calls, cleaning my mom's house, and visiting the funeral home, I finally relaxed when the girls returned for dinner, and Missy and Mia went their separate ways. During breakfast, Missy suggested avoiding the emotional strain of Mia's questions while sorting out my mom's house. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny asked abruptly. "We've only seen each other a few times outside of work. It's too early to say it's love." "Okay, Dad," Jill said, sounding like I was clueless. "You know those cartoons where girls get dreamy-eyed and hearts flutter? That's Missy when she looks at you," Jill said before I could object. They exchanged looks and then declared, "We like her." I went from joy to anger. Setting my pizza down, I headed to the sink to cool off. "Daddy," Jenny asked, "how could you shut me out all this time and now say you like my girlfriend? What did I do to deserve this? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you messages you didn't care to hear?" "Mom made us what?" I exclaimed. Jill explained, "It began when Mom said if you felt distant, you could return to her, and we'd be a family again. We're truly sorry." Turning to Jenny, I saw her eyes tear up, and she rushed to hug me. "Dad, we're so sorry." When that didn't work, she said you abandoned us and wouldn't pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She claimed your messages during the divorce were just tactics to win favor with the judge. You believed her? Dad, imagine sitting with her every day, hearing her defend one mistake against 20 years of love. We thought you were being unfair. What if it was you? Would you forgive your boyfriend for cheating? No response. Where's the line? I demanded. Unclear. Give me a clear answer. They wept, and our hug calmed me. I've missed you both so much, I said. After they professed their love, I reminded them, time to go home. School's tomorrow. Make sure your mom tells them about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week. One last embrace, then I watched them drive off, feeling warmth inside. Looking at the sky, I whispered, Mom, you didn't have to leave to bring my girls back, but thank you. I'll miss you. Wakes are always hard for me. Being near a deceased body is unsettling. My mom's wake was especially tough. Approaching her casket brought me solace, seeing her peaceful face. I knew she'd reunite with my late father, who avoided wakes. Mom planned hers meticulously, even choosing the casket. It was a relief knowing she had everything sorted. Chatting with one of her friends, Katie and my daughters arrived. Tearful hugs from the girls greeted me, while Katie stepped aside respectfully. After the prayer, Kathy placed something in the casket, then sat alone at the back. I saw it was a photo of Kathy, me, and my mom, all holding our babies, beaming. Touched, I took the photo and put it by my mom's hands, tears welling up. During the service, Kathy stayed seated at the back, chatting with everyone. Her bond with family members and their affection for her showed her enduring presence in our lives. The standard rule was for immediate family to sit in the front row, but it didn't feel right. Seeing Katie at the back, tears in her eyes. I knew Mom wouldn't have wanted it that way. Walking over, I invited her to join us. Come here. No need to hide. She hugged me gratefully, whispering a thank you. Back in front, my Uncle John offered her his seat, earning Missy's praise. Holding Missy's hand while my ex-wife was nearby felt surreal. I hoped it wouldn't cause trouble later. As we said goodbye to the last visitors, Kathy thanked me for welcoming her into the family, offering to share the limo ride. Missy's hand on my waist, I feared tension, but Katie's departure eased it. Let's get you home, Missy said, embracing me. In the kitchen, relieved the day was over, I handed Missy a cold beer. She thought things went well with Kathy. Yeah, I'm glad. I half expected her to cause trouble with you. The girls probably helped. We'll be okay after tomorrow. I hoped she was right. Maybe I was just paranoid about Katie and Missy. Will you stay over tonight? She squeezed my hand. You couldn't kick me out if you tried. We didn't make love, but her presence brought the best sleep since the divorce. You're keeping a close eye on me. I won't misuse your kindness by starting a fight, Kathy remarked as we waited for the service to begin. I know I lied. I just feel uneasy about it. She snorted, adding, How do you think I feel? I'm an outcast here, a disgrace. I frowned. No one sees you that way, especially not today. I'm sorry, Bill. I wish I could undo it all. I wish, she said, tears welling up before hurrying off to the bathroom. It's tough for all of us, Bill. My mother's friend Jean comforted me, patting my shoulder. Your mom was wonderful, and we'll all miss her. I kissed her cheek, grateful that Kathy had her mom to support her through the tears. After the funeral, we gathered at my mother's favorite Polish restaurant. Kathy looked uneasy as she searched for a seat. Taking her hand, I guided her to the table where Missy and my daughters sat. Kathy, will always be family. Despite the divorce, no matter where we sit, you're always welcome. A tear rolled down her cheek as she thanked me, and in that moment I felt like I'd finally let go of the pain she caused. Life moved on. The girls Skype with me weekly while they're at college. Missy and I are going strong, and I'm considering popping the question soon. Katie and I don't talk much, but it's always friendly. She's moving on too, dating a nice divorced dad who's a friend of one of the girls. I wish them the best. Some may say I should forgive her one mistake, but I can't. I may be seen as the villain by some, but I'm at peace with myself.